what I appreciate about both Tim Burton movies, and it really kind of especially Batman Returns though, is it looks like the cartoon and comics I grew up with.
Yeah.
Like, timeline's ambiguous. You don't really know what time and place in history this is taking place. It looks very 1940s gangster, but like there's modern day technology in it and modern day problems in it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, and then the Christian Bale one's good because it feels so real.
Yeah.
And it's like polar opposite reason for them being good.
Yeah.
Much better movies, less campy. Not a lot of camp in the Christian Bale movies.
The quality is incredibly high.
Incredibly high.
All the effects that he did, he tried to do like practical. So like everything, that's why everything looks so real. Like a lot of the newer stuff, they just lean heavily into the CGI, where Christopher Nolan doesn't like CGI. So he tries not to use it as much as possible.
Have you seen left-leaners' ideology that in the fourth movie, George Clooney one, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy were actually the heroes, and we shouldn't have ever read Batman because they were trying to stop global warming.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I mean, it's funny, and everybody's pissed off because Bruce is a trust fund billionaire, but like.
But also, they're not just trying to stop global warming.
They're killing people in the process.
They're also trying to freeze the whole world. Like, also just the fucking ice rink scene. God
so
damn
it. Oh, I know, it's so terrible. First of all, I should say, because it's show before the show, I do not lean either direction. I am a third-party voter.
Mm-hmm.
But another crazy left-wing ideology I heard this week is that preparation and provision is unethical because it takes food away from other people. So canning food, stockpiling food, things that we've done in the South for the beginning of the fucking country is apparently all unethical because it keeps somebody else from eating food that you grew and you took the time to can and that.
Yeah. So here's my big thing. Do they go to McDonald's or any fast food chain? Like, because they throw away food all day. They throw away so much food
that you could literally feed the world on the amount of.
If you are supporting that business, then you are completely against your entire ethical base of being against
it's getting wasted.
Yeah, there's
enough food waste literally to feed the whole planet.
And we're complaining about people saving food.
Yep.
See, that's
people saving food that would probably be greatly, and probably very generously able to give it to their neighbors if they needed it. Mm-hmm. In a time of need. And we're not too far removed from that. Like, I think 2011 when the tornadoes were. Yeah. There was a time, me and my wife were talking about this. There was a time during the tornadoes of 2011 where we weren't sure we were going to have drinkable water because there wasn't enough generators to keep water treatment plants and stuff running.
Right.
And we were out of power for like 14 days in Coleman County.
Yeah.
So that there was a possibility we wouldn't have clean drinking water.
Yeah.
And that's like an extremely large problem. So you're going to tell me that the guy that has a pallet of water stowed away,
who is probably sharing.
In the instance of probably very willing to share, and it's probably part of his idea for having kept it, is part of some type of unethical dilemma. Dude, I swear to God, these people make up new rules like as they go, and I'm not right leaning. And there's some crazy shit that happens in there. Like, I'm not part of a fucking militia.
Right.
I'm very anti-racist. I'm very anti-cop. Like, I'm not right-leaning at all. I am in a sense of economics because it fucking works. But like, societal things, like, definitely fucking not. But just the idea that provision and preparation is unethical.
It's kind of insane.
It is beyond insane. That's like cognitive fucking dissonance at its fucking worst.
I was talking to Zach Rodriguez. I don't really talk politics much, so bear with me on this. I know we're not a political show and we don't really like to talk politics, but just because you brought it up and just because I spoke to Zach about it not long ago, my whole thing is I'm like you. I don't lean either. I don't vote.
Yeah.
So I don't. That's why I don't talk politics, because I don't vote. I told him, like, as long as there's a 2-party system, things will never change.
Yeah, because it's just
like, I know there's
I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
quote unquote third party, right? We technically have a third party that we technically can vote for, but none of the colleges are voting for them. Even if this third party person got literally all of the votes for each state, like popular vote, I don't think it'd be enough.
Let's see. Well, it could be, because you have to have 15% of popular vote in an election to get on the debate stage.
Okay.
So theoretically, yeah, but like all these people that are like, this is the lesser of two evils, I don't really like either one of them, like, are painfully unaware there's not third party options that check those boxes for them, whether they're left leaning or right leaning. I mean, there's, green politician, green political groups that are, heavily left leaning that are definitely not Democrat still, you know what I mean? Like, are beyond Democrat. And there's things that are beyond Republican, like libertarianism, which I tend to identify with more, although as I've gotten older, I tend to lean more and more away from that in a sense. But in terms of like economic structure and stuff, they're correct.
Right.
I mean, they're the most dead on, in my opinion. But like, people are so painfully unaware that those options are there that like a libertarian candidate or a Green Party candidate is never going to be on the debate stage, because people really think it's just two options. But as long as they're pigeonholed, they're never going to get that 15% required, to get on the debate stage.
Was Bernie Sanders third party, or was he?
Technically, he is. He is an American socialist, but he runs as a Democrat. So that
okay.
Not somebody I would have voted for because of monetary reasons.
Right.
Social reasons, there's definitely worse people.
Right.
But like, I'm not in the idea. I don't believe in giving the government more power.
Right.
Ever.
No, I agree with that too.
The most right-leaning thing about me is the government doesn't need any more power.
Right. They've got plenty.
Yeah. So, I mean,
the last thing we need is to turn into fucking North Korea. So. I know there's a lot of people who think we're headed that way. I don't think we're headed that way.
I think people generally misunderstand communism, and I have the Communist Manifesto sitting on my bookshelf. Mm-hmm. I've read it. People are pretty painfully unaware of what actual socialism or communism looks like.
Right.
By the author's words. Mm-hmm. And they subscribe to these things because, there's there's a lot of European countries that do really, really well in terms of economics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also have a really large social safety net that would appeal to a Democratic or socialist voter. Mm-hmm. And they dub these countries socialistic, but they're also like the most pro-capitalism at the highest level.
Right.
So like, while individual taxes are really high, corporate taxes are really low, businesses thrive, they can pay people more, and then all of a sudden, half your paycheck going to the government, not a real big deal, because all these corporations make piles of money and can afford to pay you piles of money.
More, yeah.
And then the safety net exists because you're paying piles of money in taxes and everything's well and good, but at their core, they are the most capitalist countries.
Right.
It's just that they can afford social programs that help people.
Right.
But short-sightedness, typically.
I've never watched the channel, but I know Dr. Mike has a second channel. I can't remember what it's called. It's Dr. Mike something. I know he talks a lot about politics and various things like there. So that's probably, if you're interested in that sort of conversation.
Yeah, I think what's ridiculous, and I'm not going to get too much further than this, and I hate this. Everything the right hates is communist. Everything the left hates is fascist. Mm-hmm. And neither one of them have they fucking clue, really, as to what
is actually
real fascism or real communism looks like.
Yep.
They're so fucking far off from... Now, there's definitely some social injustices and stuff that happen. Right. I believe that they do 100%. And I am very pro them not happening anymore. The solutions that they think are going to help, I don't think will.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then on top of that, like, you have people like Dr. Mike that came from a legitimate communist nation that knows, and all of a sudden somehow their opinion's completely discredited.
Right.
Because of something. But you have people, it's called the American dream for a reason. You have immigrants from all over move here to escape something else. Mm-hmm. And I I think people are pretty far off from what the actual definition of communism or fascism actually looks like.
I think that's pretty fair.
Talking to somebody, a friend of mine who will remain nameless, it is, I would say that he's more of an idealist than he is a communist, but he calls himself a communist. His idea of communism is very like community driven.
Mm-hmm.
Free market within the community, stuff like that. It's actually, when you actually get that real definition out of them, it's like pure capitalism to its core. You don't have a lot of corporate greed and stuff because it's a fair market for small business owners and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
What he actually describes as a free market.
Right.
But because it's community driven,
mm-hmm.
he uses the term communism, but it's
not.
I understand in an idyllic situation,
mm-hmm.
if you're going to idealize the definition, I guess you can call it communism.
Right.
But if you're going to say what it is historically, not fucking communism. I mean, I think, it goes to show you too, though, if you talk to people and get more of what their idea of those things are, you get a better understanding of them and also a better understanding that they're not fucking crazy.
Right.
Because I very much support the same things. It's just not, I'm not going to use that fucking term.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
because that's not the correct term for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that's enough political ranting.
Yeah, it's enough political ranting.
Probably for the next 100 episodes. Did you know we're closing in on our 100th episode?
I can drink to that.
80 something.
I know you're not drinking, but you should try that.
What is it?
It is the Texas whiskey Tammy brought. Agave nectar and aromatic bitters. It's really fucking good. The agave nectar does something different to it. It's really light.
That is very
old
good.
fashioned.
Yeah.
Yep.
The agave nectar, I could definitely taste it. It makes a big difference. I'm not drinking because prep. We are pretty close. We got about 6 weeks. So just in case anybody listening
6 weeks
is wondering.
Starting this week, because I have newbies that are all of a sudden prepping for a meet in February.
Yep.
And it happens to be on the same day.
Yep.
People prepping for regionals.
Yep.
Very, very in tune with the calendar currently.
Yeah.
Because of those things. But
yeah,
it should be really fun.
Yeah, because after this week, it's my deload week, 5 weeks out. So trying to stay away from it as much as possible, keep my liver and kidneys and my blood levels just kind of.
I ordered some more nattokinase and a kidney support the other day.
Since you mentioned that, I want to say this on record because this is a conversation I was having with Joe Sullivan a few weeks ago, and he said something that just kind of like makes so much sense, but also blew my mind at the same time because I'd never thought about it that way. So when we get these vitamins and stuff, these supplements, there is a serving size.
Sure.
These serving sizes are not designed for people like us. They're designed for normal people. So if you take a dose of whatever it is and stuff isn't working, take more. Because you are probably more, as a human, you are more, like, there's more mass of you, so you need more of it to make things work.
We are large people.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same way as, like, we're sitting here drinking alcohol now. I'm probably going to be able to have a few more drinks than a guy that's 5'7" and 185 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Our body it takes more to reach an effect that we need.
Sure. And
but I just never thought about that before.
The muscle mass, alone, let alone body weight, we're relatively tall. I mean, there's a lot that goes in.
Yep.
A lot that goes into that. That's a really, really good piece of information. It's the same way. The most simple thing is the government suggests 2,500 calories for a male and a 2,000 calorie diet for a female.
Mm-hmm.
2,500 calories, I am going to be skin and bones in 6 months.
Yep.
Like, that's all there is to it. I mean, my calorie demands are much, much higher than that. Like, my cutting calories are over 3,000.
Right.
I'm sure that your cutting calories are over 3,000.
Oh, yeah.
Well over it, probably. 32, 33?
I would have to look and do the math, but I can tell you with what I'm eating now, I don't know the calorie count, but I'm eating, on my training days, 600 carbs, 130 fats, and then 230 to 270 protein, and I'm barely gaining weight.
Yeah.
So
he's eating 2,400 calories in carbs alone.
Yeah.
600 times 4 to figure that out. And then 130 times 9, might as well call it 900. So right there in carbs and fat alone, you're at 3,300 calories.
And the protein
And
is
then
another
800 to 900 calories in protein.
Yep.
So I mean, he's just barely above maintenance, and you're talking about 4,000 plus calories a day. So I mean, for anybody, it's simple. It's a little bit simpleton math, but anybody that wants to know, for every pound of muscle gained, it affords you about 50 extra calories in your day. So you can't quite figure out maintenance like that. I wouldn't use that to figure out maintenance. That's 50 extra calories over that. It bumps your maintenance up, not necessarily that just because you have 110 pounds of muscle mass on your frame does not mean that you can eat 5,500 calories a day and stay the same. It's not perfect math, but it generally affords you 50 extra calories a day.
That makes sense.
So I mean, that's when you have somebody. I think both of us measure well over 110. I think you measure
skeletal muscle.
Yeah, skeletal muscle mass.
I think
you're not at last time I scanned, I was at 121.
I don't remember. I thought mine went down, but I couldn't tell you exactly.
There's a reason why I call that the body scammer.
Yeah.
Sometimes too, because I mean, I think it is manipulated to sell you things sometimes.
Right.
I've had people that were visibly more muscular and visibly more fit go in and scan worse.
Yeah. It kind of like
we've taped them, like we know they've lost fat, like waist is smaller, they're visibly more muscular and they're stronger, but they lost muscle mass.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, of course it's not a perfect science anyway, but
the only way to get a really, really accurate basis for that is to do a DEXA, and those are like $100-$150, I think.
I still hold too. This is something you coaches that listen, I think about Ron, Richard, Zach, any other coaches that listen. I've theorized before, to become an elite powerlifter, you need 50% of your body weight to be skeletal muscle mass, which for me would be about 140 pounds.
Yeah.
And I think you're at that number.
I don't know.
If you rock about 120, you would be at that number.
I don't know if I'm at 120.
But that's something I actually believe in.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you look at the guys who are the best in the world, they are visibly lean.
Joe's talked about before, he walks around with his lean body mass before he, not skeletal muscle mass, lean body mass before he cuts is heavier than what he cuts to.
Yeah, it was like 220 something pounds, and then he cuts to 220. Yeah.
Lean body mass is everything not fat, so that includes bone and organ.
Yep.
But that's insane. So like, I think that kind of backs up that number that you need 50% skeletal muscle mass.
Yeah.
To be an elite powerlifter.
Makes sense.
And also, contributes to that body composition thing that we harp on all the time.
We do talk about that a lot.
We do. I believe in it too, though. What are you about to say?
I was just trying to think of anything else show before the show, but I don't think I've got anything else.
I don't think I got anything else either. He's not drinking. I'm drinking. It's an old fashioned. I just used agave nectar and simple syrup.
I am drinking. I'm drinking an Ultra Paradise Monster Energy.
Things are changing, which me and Nathan will discuss in a little bit. But for now, our sponsor is still Scooter's Coffee.
Yep.
We drink a lot of fucking Scooter's Coffee.
Had some today.
We like them. I had some today. They're amazing.
Had the sugar.
They continue to sponsor the show. Richard and Catherine East do a good job. Richard is my age and a very, very, very wise and industrious person.
He also has his own podcast.
He does. We need to talk to Richard about maybe we need a crossover. Of course, we're going to have to be a lot cleaner on his podcast than he's going to have to be on ours.
Right.
But a crossover episode could be good. I think we should just air it as one episode.
Oh, yeah.
Both podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he's doing that. I think I haven't got to listen yet. It's on my to-do list. But I'm bad at listening to podcasts. Believe it or not. It's on my list, but is it not kind of fitness related a little bit? Or is it just
I haven't gotten to listen to it yet either.
I think it's a little bit fitness and a little bit just like.
My guess is it's very similar to Modern Wisdoms.
Yeah, I could see that being that way. Yeah, that's fair.
Chris Williams.
A little bit of everything probably. Yeah. But he is in the middle of a fitness journey that I'm fortunate enough to get to help him out with. He's coming back to lifting in January. He's chasing a righteous 5K time right now. He wants a 7 mile an hour 5K split. So
Pretty.
Should be about a 22 or 23 minute 5K.
Yeah.
Which is
That's quick.
Because it's 3.2 miles, so it should be a little over 21 minutes. But yeah, he's chasing that, and he's coming back to lifting. So shout out to our sponsors, like I said, Scooters Coffee, Richard and Catherine Neese, and that's pending a change, which I will not announce here.
Right. I will say, not very, good for you calorie wise, but I'm also bulking. That Oreo cake ball is damn good.
The problem, no shot at their prices at all, but they're only like $2.99 a piece.
Yeah,
like, how many of them motherfuckers are you ordering?
I just got one.
You just got one.
Literally, I took like 2 bites of it, gave Desi a couple bites.
A serving size should be about 6 of those.
Yeah.
If you're eating like I eat, probably more so like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But they are the cake balls are good.
They're very very good.
I don't remember which one I had recently.
There's the Oreo, there's the King Candy cake one, and there's another one I can't remember. But I really just wanted the Oreo.
Their sugar cookies are awesome too.
Yeah, I still haven't tried it yet. It's probably gonna go away before I get
last show before the show thing. I have one more show before the show thing. I'm having terrible skin problems, and we did it the doctor's way, and their medication did not help. I did it my way and attempted. I have quit daily nicotine. Obviously, I still vape on the show because when I'm drinking, I'm smoking. That's all there is to it. I quit daily nicotine. That did not help. Mm-hmm. You can get nicotine-induced psoriasis is what it's called. Basically, it's a blood flow thing. That did not help. So I'm probably going to have to go to kind of an extreme diet, unfortunately, to see if it doesn't clear it up.
My brother had to do the same thing. I think his big thing was just stepping away from dairy.
I'm a big dairy guy, so maybe that's it. But I also drink lactose-free dairy. The only thing I have lactose in it is occasionally cheese. Yeah. And not in large doses. Like I'm not eating cheese sticks every day or something. And I do cottage cheese a lot of time for breakfast because fat-free cottage cheese is all protein, super, super simple. It's easy to get 60 grams of protein with a glass of milk and cottage cheese. So, I do that a lot. I'm probably going gluten-free and soy-free. Yeah. Which isn't too far off from what Ron wants me to eat anyway. And if that doesn't help, probably dairy's next, which is kind of
bad.
A little bit of a bummer because especially when I'm eating clean, I lean heavily on fat-free dairy. Right. Because I enjoy it and it's easily repeatable. Yep. But yeah, it's not like, I don't look like a leper or anything standing here with Nathan, but it is enough to be annoying.
And that's not the reason why there's no video today. The camera's just not working.
I'm that fucking ugly. But I'm having a lot of issues, like skin problems in my beard. That's the reason I trim my beard short and all kind of stupid shit. So may get to update y'all on some more, not necessarily stuff that I'd professionally recommend, but some more extreme dieting trends in order to help my skin out a little bit. So.
Haven't had, knock on wood, I haven't had any issues with, other than just acne from some PEDs. That's been kind of.
I don't even get that on my face. I get it I
get it on my
body
back.
Acne, but not even bad.
I'll get a couple of pimples on my face, but it's never egregious.
It might be a little bit worse when I'm on a 19 Nors, but I'm just on my TRT protocol.
Oh, when I'm on TRT, I don't. Yeah, it's just when I go up anything else, typically I start feeling it.
Face is definitely a little greasier for sure when I'm on. Yeah. But never. Even when I was a kid, I didn't experience bad acne, so that's one reason why skin problems are so
kind of concerning.
What the fuck now?
Yeah.
And it may be alcohol related to some extent too, which that's probably going to get kicked too. So
right.
Who knows? That's the show before the show, guys. Drink Scooters Coffee. Make good drinks, and this is a Sip It and Rip It podcast. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, watch us on YouTube, although this will be videoless this time. I'm so ugly, he didn't want to cut, from my skin problems, he didn't want to turn the camera on. That's the lie we're going to go with anyway. Rate us 5 stars, leave us likes, comments, send us DMs, tell us we're great, tell us we suck. Don't be a hoe, share the show. Thanks, Andy Frisella. Don't sue me. And that's the end. All right, wait. You can follow us.
There you go.
At Nathan Skedios, at Coleman_Barbell, and at Sip It and Rip It on Instagram. So
we are on TikTok, but we never post on TikTok. And TikTok might be getting axed from the United States. So
I may be pro that. I'm not sure.
I hate TikTok. That's why we're not on TikTok anymore.
I mean,
or not active on TikTok anymore, because I hate it as a platform.
it doesn't give me the type of. I don't feel like the content is easy to, because I have a TikTok. I kept one for Alpha, and I still have one active. I don't post on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like how you interact with content on there. It's a little stupid. And I also don't like the fact that it's rapid fire and you can't visually shop for your content. Like, you can search for content, but like on Instagram, if you go to your For You page, it's like all the shit you're interested in, you can click on a post. And, you know, like, you know,
can
it gives
scroll through and kind of like
gives you as many posts as your phone can fit on the screen.
Yeah.
And you can, you know, I just don't like it. And I do think it's a little bit fucking brain rot, to be honest with you.
It is definitely brain rot. I mean, there's some cool stuff on there, but it's also one of those things you really have to dig for gems.
As a musician, I really hate what it does to music, too, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You have these really fucking dumb songs that trend, and then
They're
it becomes a Billboard,
fucking,
you know, thing, and like,
people will take a sound bite from something obscure and it'll become incredibly popular.
You know, before we get to the heart of this podcast too much, I will be completely honest. I was completely off social media from 2012 until 2018 or 2019, and that was the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
I am on it now because it's good for business.
Yeah.
Instagram in particular, I do not see a whole lot of business from. Facebook, I do.
Mm-hmm.
But Facebook is beyond stressful because of, I will poke fun about football, but it's all religion, politics, and football.
Yeah.
And the first two I do not want to fucking talk about in an open forum. I just don't. Everybody's got an opinion, and like everybody's got an asshole. It all stinks.
Yeah. Not everybody wants to see yours.
Yeah, not everybody wants to see your butthole / opinion. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know. Facebook's a cesspool, but it is good for business.
Yeah.
I've had to dial back what I say and what I do on Facebook for business purposes. The only thing kind of fun about Instagram is I can go a little bit more. I can be a little bit more unhinged on Instagram. But outside of that, I wish I wasn't on any of it.
Yeah, the only like, I am on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is my primary like communication with social media, and then Facebook is basically for me like it's sharing memes and keeping up with family, and that's it.
That's fair. I mean, super. I think it's the death of Western civilization. Social media is, to be honest with you.
It's turned people incredibly stupid.
Incredibly narcissistic.
Morality, honestly, I think has taken a dip because of social media. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you see there are people who have social media pages like Joey Swole, and it's always just like, this negative shit is bad.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why is there so much of this negative shit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it spreads a lot of both left and right leaning, going back from the show stuff, and I'm not going to get any detail in the show. But I think it spreads a lot of misinformation and a lot of just blatant fucking stupidity.
Yeah.
It has removed common sense from so much shit.
But I saw this video of this guy saying you're wrong. So you're wrong because I believe this guy, even though he has no backing data and he didn't show any scientific studies.
Every coach that listens to this podcast knows how damaging social media is to health and wellness.
Yeah. Not even just like from a misspread of bad information or spread of misinformation, but also like people's opinion of themselves become worse because they see other people who are doing significantly better. And then
you have the body positivity movement, which I'm not entirely against.
I think there's
to a degree, but there is a definite hard line where I'm like, this is now unhealthy, and we should.
When you are morbidly obese and
you're be glorified at that
you are like, I'm big and beautiful, and it's like you're unhealthy.
You may still be a beautiful person. That's not really in question for me. You may be a great person and stuff like that, but like actively like glorifying like unhealthy things.
Yeah,
even drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
It goes beyond.
Food,
fatness, or obesity. It really does. Thinness, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, there's a point where being thin is definitely damaging. Equally as damaging as obesity is. Like, So I mean, while I kind of support the body positivity movement to a degree, because I'm happier, bigger. I can't lie to you. Would I like to look better? I think all of us would.
Mm-hmm.
Would I like to be healthier? I also think all of us would.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm somebody that's more confident as a big man. Yeah. I've been skinny before. I've had an eating disorder. I've been 140 pounds. It's not at all more fun.
No, it's not.
You know what I mean? Well, than being big.
You know what? I remember being the big benefit of being skinny was I didn't sweat as much.
Easier to tie my shoes. Didn't sweat as much. I mean,
dude, really for me, like,
I mean,
I've never been like.
I feel like I ain't gonna lie to you. I feel like I look better,
bigger.
I feel like. I mean, I'm not saying I got a gut I could lose 100%.
Right.
Like I could definitely be more fit. Not saying I'm not protecting myself at all. There's a lot of things about me I would change, but yeah, I mean, I think I would rather be somebody be like, oh, that guy's
large.
That's fucking large, kind of in a
like a
in an intimidating athletic way. You know what I mean? Like. Then I had look at that skinny bitch. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be skinny for abs.
I've said, you know what I mean?
Like I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Like I mean, I honestly think that if I successfully cut to where Ron wants me to cut, I'll have visible abs at 250.
Yeah.
So
that's my thing.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
I've said this 1,000 times. I never want to get below 200 pounds again. Not ever. For any reason. I mean,
there's really no reason to anymore.
No.
But I mean. Part of the skinniness factor is glorified by a archaic and kind of stupid medical industry.
Yeah,
put too much emphasis on BMI and not enough on blood work and body composition.
Yeah. But I think we're definitely getting to a point where a lot of that is dying in a sense. It's like skinny isn't healthy and fat isn't healthy. Being healthy is being healthy. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That you can be like me and you could both be healthy at like very varying weights.
Yeah, I mean,
like if I'm 220, I can be very healthy at 220, and you being 270, you could be very healthy at 270.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Like this has nothing to do with weight. Like,
it really doesn't. I think body composition, diet, and blood work matter more than actual weight on the scale or anything like that.
But people get really, really tied to that number.
They do get really tied in both directions. I mean, like, listen, we see it in our own stuff too. Talking about like PED uses, how far has our brains come when it comes to PED use?
Right.
Like we both have a less is more attitude about PED use now, and we still have a million people that will tell you more.
Yep.
Most of the time it's bro science. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think any coach that is doing things ethically is telling you more is the choice.
Yeah.
I think as a coach, I've accepted I'm going to have people that do it and people that don't, and I need to know the safest way for them to do it and the safest way for them not to do it.
Yep.
And then we need to guide them to their goals in the safest way possible, knowing that they're going to make decisions that we may not even agree with.
Right.
The best thing you can do is, I mean, I use PEDs, but like, I'm not telling my clients they have to be on PEDs.
Right.
You know what I mean? I do suggest, especially beyond a certain age, going and getting blood work done and toying with the idea of TRT.
Yeah.
But I'm not like, oh man, you got to pin 2 grams a week of this, this, and this, and this.
Yep.
And you got to eat as much as you can. Don't care what it is. I'm not doing that.
Right.
Like, talk to people that I've put on a bulk. Like I've adapted. We gain weight on as few calories as possible. We lose weight on as many calories as possible. Mm-hmm. That's the philosophy I use. Man, woman, or child, whatever we're doing, that's how we're doing it. And always before PEDs, I'm talking about sleep, food, and hydration.
Yep.
Before I talk about PEDs, like
PEDs should be the last thing implemented.
It should be the last thing implemented always. Sometimes you get clients that are already using, and the best thing you can do is guide them in a healthy way because at that point they're probably not going to quit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the ethical thing is to guide them in the healthiest way possible, regardless of what that choice is. But, I mean, we see that in our own stuff all the time. You see plenty of people say, hey, you need to do this right. Less is more. Balanced blood work, stuff like that is going to lend itself to better athleticism. You're going to breathe better on less. Your heart's going to function better on less. That's going to lead to a better work capacity. That's going to lead to a stronger person. That's all true. And then you have people who are polar opposites. Like, hey, you need, 10 IUs of HGH a day. You need, 750 tests a week and, 450 tren a week and an oral 6 weeks out. And if you don't do that, you're going to be a weak piece of shit. And that's just not fucking true.
Yeah.
But I mean, we see it in every corner. a couple of diets that I even have used and identified with before, and I've used them to success. Carnivore diet, paleo, keto are all diets I've seen clients use. Richard Neese, we talked about our sponsor, he's on the carnivore diet now. It's working for him.
Yeah, and
these diets work. Yeah. I mean, they do. Richard also went into it knowing that it wasn't sustainable and it's not something he's going to be on forever.
Right.
Because he's chasing a cardiovascular goal, it makes a lot of sense because he drops weight rapidly, and his time running improves rapidly. Also, it lends itself to some lightness. You don't feel heavy and bogged down when you're on a diet like that. And that's all really beneficial to cardiovascular movement. He also isn't sedentary. Yeah. Like, carnivore diet could be incredibly bad for somebody that is sedentary and not moving and not doing anything to protect their cholesterol. Right. You know what I mean? It all comes with like caveats. Like I mentioned in the show before the show, I might be doing, having to do a more extreme diet for my health soon. It's not that it's better for performance. It's that I have specific medical needs that I need to address that'll ultimately, hopefully, be rectified by a diet. But you have all these extremes. But I was on a carnivore diet thing the other day, and they were talking. And it's one of those things on Facebook. It's like a group that you might be interested in, want to be added to, so they'll show you some posts from it. But I was on a post about carnivore zealots arguing over the best brand of hot dog. Oh. And I was like, man, like I have people on the carnivore diet now. Some of it's by their own choice, and that's something, the client needs to be able to have some, say so in what they do. Nobody that I'm going to put on a diet like that's eating fucking hot dogs. Right. Like, are you serious? Like,
that's baffling to me.
I mean, it is. Like, I mean, when I do anything like that, Whole Foods is the first thing you reach for. Yeah. Maybe if you're in a bind, we reach for beef jerky or something like that, tuna pouches, something like that. But like, why the fuck are y'all in a healthy forum talking about what brand of hot dog's the best and arguing about it? It's all fucking hot dogs, dude. I mean, it's packed full of nitrates. It's going to give you a goddamn heart attack. Yep. Like, this shouldn't be there. I know it's a carnivore forum, but you should not be talking about. You should be talking about what type of steak you think's the best cut, or like the benefit of eating lean meat when you're cutting or fatty meat when you're like that should be the shit you're talking about. Why the fuck are we arguing about hot dogs?
It's meat,
but
bro.
But that's what the internet has
quote
done.
Unquote meat.
And I bet if you got in a vegan forum, they would be talking about whole vegan versus, vegan with things like tofu, processed vegan stuff. Like, I don't know. It's baffling to me. It goes back to that. I make fun of keto sometimes because I'm like, people will fucking dip cheese and ranch dressing and call it keto, and it's like dude, it's supposed to be meats and vegetables. You're not supposed to be eating fucking cheese and dipping it in ranch dressing. Like, it's supposed to be whole foods, like low carb, right? But it's supposed to be whole foods. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just some really, really, and ironically, because we're talking about people's health, this all really does tie into the topic of the day. Yeah. But like, and I find a lot of like fattier diets like that, and I mean fad, like, not fat. Fad with a D. A fad diet like that is very, very ideal for the person. We had Lance on, who's a vegan. That's been very, very ideal for him because he's an ethical vegan and just struggled with the idea of eating meat. It's not that, he doesn't like it now, but it's not necessarily that he's a personal trainer too. It doesn't necessarily think that he doesn't even necessarily think it's the healthiest option. It's just something that he identifies with as a person, and it makes sense. All this stuff's very individual. The paleo diet is something I've used for a lot of clients because it's just really easy to allow them to eat as much as they want and still underfeed them and still get weight loss stuff from them. I mean, it very much depends on the client and their wants and needs and like not only medically, but what they can stick to. And it's just really, really, but it's really, really weird what the internet and what social media has done to diet culture. Yeah. It's been good for it in some senses. We have people like Dr. Lane Norton, who, if you didn't know, the Carbon Diet app has a keto option. Yeah. He is not a keto fan, but he's like, hey, if this works best for you, right, we'll help you do it right. Yeah. Like, there's extremely good examples like Dr. Lane, and then there's really, he's the only person that comes to mind immediately. Maybe vertical diet guy, help me out here.
Vertical diet.
The white rhino. Why can't I remember?
Oh man.
Stan Efferdine.
Yeah, Stan Efferdine.
Stan Efferdine, really, really, really fucking good. Diet choices. Although Lane would probably have some things to say about him too. You have some people that are like really seem like they've got it right.
Yep.
And really are trying to guide people. Even if some of the things they do you don't agree with, they're really trying to guide people in the right direction. And then you have people that are just like taking a hard right and just fucking running with it, dude. Like they're just making
Liver
it up
King.
as they go. It's like Liver King and shit like that. Dr. Mike posted about organ meats the other day.
Yeah, he did.
Like you can get all those vitamins from something else, and the something else doesn't taste like shit.
Yep. Exactly.
Like we don't really. I actually kind of like liver, but you don't have to fucking eat liver to get those vitamins.
Right.
Like, and depends on the context in which I like liver. Like,
right.
But
Like chicken livers.
chicken livers are cool. I'll eat beef liver. Duck liver is very, very common in like fancy food. I like it. But like pate, stuff like that, shit's good. Can't help it. But you don't have to eat organ meat to get these vitamins. Like it's fucking asinine. But you have people that, people just fucking run with this.
Yep. And people
It
will
is what it
believe them.
is. People will believe them. And that's the damage of every one of us personal trainers know calories in, calories out, gospel.
Yep.
Fact. Can't argue with it.
People
Like,
do.
but people do. Yeah, people do. Like, and I think for the most part, most of us want, a relatively high to low carb, depending on need. I would say mid to high carb.
Yeah.
I think most of us, if we're in the professional realm, like 100 grams of carbs or less is pretty low carb.
Yeah.
Probably 150 grams or less for a man is pretty low carb. And that's even like Atkins, the original low carb diet, Atkins was like 100 grams of carbs or something, right? Like, so, I mean, I think most of us would agree that like a low fat, high carb diet is probably the best for your heart health. And it's probably the best thing for the masses, but you always have like I said, clients that have either medical needs or preferences or even ethical needs in the case of Lance that we just have to work around.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, you have to find something that works, and sometimes these diets work, but you don't need your client going off the fucking rails and following, carnivore zealots about how to eat and everything like that.
And then you see them with their single pack of hot dogs that they're eating in the gym. You're like,
Yeah,
what
it's
the
like,
fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Like, everybody that I know that carnivore diet works out well, the carnivore is not a low carb diet. You still get carbs from honey and dairy.
Yeah.
It's a high fat diet, but it's not necessarily a low carb diet. But everybody I've ever seen that diet works for, there's X amount of berries still in their diet. I think about people like Dr. I think of his name, Sean
Baker?
Sean Baker, who's kind of a kook now, but in the beginning he had really good information. But that guy he's eating whole eggs. Butter is probably the only thing I kind of disagree with. He's eating red meat. And he eats fish sometimes and shellfish sometimes. He's not eating a lot of chicken. He still has X amount of berries in his diet, and he's not fucking eating hot dogs.
Right. But
This guy's, and he's fucking in his 60s and ripped.
Right.
Like, he's jacked. Like, it's worked for that guy, but he's also eating exclusively whole foods.
Right.
Like,
I think that's what we always come back to. Like, no matter what the diet is, like, whatever
Is
your
it whole food
preference, is
sources?
it whole foods or not?
Yeah,
Because,
I mean-
like, that, if your diet should be at least, like, 80 to 90% whole foods, in my opinion.
I still think if you're an athlete, if you're not an athlete, and you're just in the gym for general wellness and eating right for general wellness, I think the paleo diet's the way to go because it's exclusively whole foods.
Right. I just say that just to give you some tolerance so that you're not like stressed out about food.
Yeah.
And then you have that freedom to be like, I was really good all week. I can have this piece of cake or whatever.
I mean,
the kid's birthday
You get
party.
some tolerance, absolutely. It doesn't mean that a piece of cake or a piece of wheat bread's going to kill you.
Right.
It doesn't.
Just mostly whole foods. Like that should be your goal.
Carnivore zealots that are like vegetables are not going to kill you.
But
But
they release toxins when they're stressed, bro. And that toxin is toxic and it will kill you if you consume like
the dose makes the poison.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I mean that's all there is to it. And that's the problem with the red meat and saturated fat. Like, Dr. Lane put out something a few months ago that said if you eat enough fiber, saturated fat's probably not a problem.
Yep.
Guess where fiber comes from?
Fruits and vegetables.
Absolutely. So maybe eat a fucking little bit of broccoli with that steak.
Salads, green beans, whatever green tickles your fancy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with keto. I hate to harp on this because we got stuff to get to, but like if you're going to do keto right and it's whole foods and if it's meats, fruits, vegetables, and I understand some fruits you can't, but low glycemic fruits, berries, stuff like that. If you're doing that, keto works and it will make you healthier.
Yep.
If you're dipping deli meat and ranch dressing, I don't care if you're losing weight or not, it's probably not going to be that great for your fucking heart, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to tell you, but like, people have they develop their own idea about it and they just fucking run with it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but.
What did you do in the gym this week?
So since we've been gone for 2 weeks, I'll just run down like my cool stuff, which was bench comp we had on Saturday that I originally was not going to show up to, and then decided I was going to, and then you told me it was noon, and I was like, "Fuck, I'm not going to be awake that early."
And then
I was awake that early, so I went down there and pressed 455 pretty convincingly, which
one going away. You won pretty easily.
Yeah. Austin was second. 430. He not hit 430. No, he hit 430. I hit 435. And then to rub salt in the wound, I did 455. Could have done more, but I took it as this is my RP 9/10.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it's also you just did what was required to win.
Yeah,
I did. It's not a big deal, but I did have a side bet for third place. And the only reason I didn't attempt more is because I did miss 430, so I could have called it down and did something else in my third attempt because we did it like ladder style, like strongman. It's pretty much last man standing. You could bench until you couldn't bench anymore.
Right.
Like nobody cared how many attempts you took, anything like that. But I called, and it was kind of dirty. But I had a side bet with one of my clients. He hit 405. I called up 410 to chip him, and then he missed 415.
Yep.
So like. It was what it was. I missed 430 kind of high. I'm a little disappointed in it.
Yeah.
But I probably could have pressed 420 or 425, but it wouldn't have changed the standing, so it didn't matter.
Right.
There was no reason to go to an RP 10.
Right.
After I missed, I'd already missed one. So, but I mean, it was a fun day. And you won how much? How much you win?
It was about $200.
$200?
And a shirt. 2 shirts.
Oh, hell yeah.
Courtesy of Tamara. She said, take a shirt. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And she's like, get one for Desi too. I was like, oh yeah, sure. So we got some garage shirts. The one in the hoodie that you're wearing.
All together though, I'm pretty happy with my team in terms of pressing.
Yeah, everybody hit some good PRs. It was cool.
Yeah, even the smaller guys that participated and paid knew they wasn't in the money. They set PRs and stuff like that, or at least matched. So I mean, it was pretty.
It was a good day.
Pretty
for
good
everybody.
day. Yeah, pretty. We got a really strong bench press team.
Across
the board. Still to this day, don't know how Joey didn't beat me.
Yeah, I think he's just having an off day, to be honest with you.
Maybe. I
mean, his 405, when I watched it, I was like, man, that kind of looks not great. So I was like, that's weird. But
to be fair, he's not prepping for anything right now. So he immediately went to the off season after his meet in November. So he hasn't had anything over 330 in his hands.
Right.
Since competition day where he pressed, in
November,
424 or 429 or whatever he pressed.
Yeah.
So like, it had been a while. Yeah. So,
but aside from that, as far as my week goes, I had a 675 deadlift 2 days later, which moved well. Kind of was thinking that would be my last pull of prep was 675, but everything had gone so well so far, and looks like my original plan of 695 for my last pull of prep is probably going to go. And if that goes, my opener may be a little higher than anticipated going into regionals, but we'll kind of see how it moves and stuff like that. And then squat day, I think I hit 535 or 525.
Oh, one or the other.
It was something like that. Wasn't great. Wasn't super stellar. Wasn't super happy about it. Didn't feel good that day. I'd also benched and deadlifted incredibly heavy earlier in the week/weekend. So like kind of wasn't expecting it to go well. But I was just kind of like, we'll take what we can get. And, but it was fine. No complaints other than just wishing I could have put a little more on the bar, but that's okay. Squat is not my strength. So if we can still get in the high fives, I'll be happy for a regional. So
fair enough.
That was pretty much my whole week.
I hear you. I had
2 weeks.
a another deadlift day on Monday. Pretty much just barbell good mornings.
Yeah.
To take into account that I've hurt my lat. And then a bunch of posterior chain stuff. Tuesday had a heavy floor press, was definitely still feeling the bench press day. Moved slow. It was at 305, close grip on floor press, which may be the most diabolical and fucking evil thing Ron has ever made me fucking do. So I don't think I've ever struggled more with an upper body movement than I do with close grip floor press. Like, it has been incredibly humbling. Most of the time I adapt quick to an upper body variation and, a couple weeks and I'm absolutely crushing it. This one has just been oppressive. Like, heavy on the press, but oppressive. Like, I can't lie. I do think that they're benefiting me some because I've had an enormous amount of pressing power on my non-floor press days. Wednesday was front squats. I'm an abysmal squatter, which all of y'all know, so I'm not scared to tell you this number, but I hit 3 sets of 6 on pause front squats at 259. The pause is definitely spicy. That was actually a volume PR on front squat, which is, I'm aware that it's pathetic. But also, front squats always make you feel like you've wrestled a grizzly bear. They fucking suck. They're incredibly hard. But I think it's the core work that Ron has me do starting to show up on squat specifically. We talked about the deadlift comp and how it was obvious that my stronger core has benefited me a lot. But on squats, it's really showing up. Thursday, I went to rehab for the first time for my lat and for my hips. Cleared on the lat to start doing back work. Nothing really special other than, some stretches and stuff before pre and post workout. Not going to be doing anything too heavy, but I can do pull downs. Pretty much do everything but a pull up. Would probably be the most at 280 pounds. That'd be the most stressful back thing I can do right now. But I pretty much cleared on that, and then did the rest of that rehab session working on my hips, which is incredibly fruitful. And I'm going to be adding some of that stuff Ron had already added to my workout, but I'm going to be adding quite a bit more rehab protocol for my hips. I warmed up with those things today and had a great squat day for me. At least it was pain-free. And then yesterday I hit 335, 3 sets of 6. Not a great number for me on bench press, not like super strong, but they move like 135 pounds. Like I absolutely threw them to the ceiling. So speed matters. Like if you can dominate weight that is, that's still, that's what, 75, 80% of my press, somewhere like that. I don't know what the exact math is, but if you can absolutely smoke that amount of weight, percentage wise, and it feel good and it not slow you down much, that's generally a pretty good sign. So I'll take it. High bar today. I did squat a high bar PR. It was pathetic because I'm not good at squats. But it was probably an RPE 7.5 and it was a PR. So like the idea that I'm doing my worst squat variation, I'm constantly setting PRs on both front squat and high bar, bodes pretty well for the future of my squat, I think. But I do credit that rehab work. Really did a good job warming up my hips. I was 100% pain-free today. Didn't even think about my hips, and that's a place I haven't been in a long time. So pretty fucking happy with my week. Ready to deadlift again. We're going to play with stance. So maybe I should preemptively apologize to anybody I've picked on about pulling sumo. And we're going to play with my grip. We might be double overhanded and hook from here on out. We don't know yet. But we're going to take one more week of no deadlifting, and then I'll give you deadlifting, and it'll probably be switch hitting until we decide what avenue is best.
Yeah.
So.
Going to be one of those.
I don't see me actually moving to sumo because I'm naturally just not good at it.
Yeah.
My position is better sumo. But right now I have hip problems, so I don't think I have the hip strength to be a sumo puller. Right. It may be the solution to my hip problems. Pulling sumo might allow me to eventually deadlift more and then eventually squat more. But I don't think. I think the real solution to my problem is probably going to be moving double overhanded and hook because I can set my lats better double overhanded. But we'll see. So
PR songs?
PR songs, baby.
No, I've listened to a few that have made me go, "Oh man, pretty good."
I'm still downloading new music regularly, probably about 10 albums a week. And, I'm not like, other than my friend's band, which I expected to be good because they're good, I've not been gripped by anything new.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I have this fear as a musician and as a music nerd in general that maybe I'm getting to the point that like I'm old enough that I just want to listen to the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that guy ever. Like I want to be open-minded. But I feel like I'm in a rut because I still go back to the same fucking 10 bands I've always listened to.
Yeah.
Like I don't have Spotify Wrapped. I have Apple Music. I use Spotify too, ironically. But I looked at my Wrapped the other day and it was the same. Like half the bands in my top 10 were the same bands I've always.
Right.
And I don't necessarily expect that to change. But there was one band in particular who shall remain nameless because I'm a little bit of ashamed that the normies like them as much as they do. I listen to like more than anything else, and I'm like, I've never been this person.
Right.
Like, I'm a little disappointed. Now, that album is really, really good, and it's worth listening to over and over again. But I've been a little disappointed by the fact that, like, there wasn't a new presence of anybody in my top 10.
Right.
So
I can understand that. I don't even remember my top 10.
This is a little bit fucking depressing just because I want to be the guy that listens to things that are better than what you listen to.
Fair. First one I'm going to put on was something that I don't remember if it was on my like shuffle play where it was like suggested for me or if it's something I'd liked before and just hadn't come back to in a while, but A Sign of Things to Come by Silosis.
Silosis is a band we've talked about a couple of times.
Have we?
Yeah. Maybe me and you have, and I haven't been on the podcast.
I may have put it on the it may have been this song specifically. I don't know. But it very much gives me a vibe of like old school Pantera. Like Domination, stuff like that. Very, very cool. Very good. So that's going to be my first one.
My first one, I have three tonight because I basically have an honorable mention because of a local band I'm going to put on here. But my first one is Like It's Your Last by Devil Sold His Soul. They have a lot of like black metal influence, but they're also really kind of light and emo in another way. A lot of blast beats, a lot of tremolo, stuff like that, but it's in a very washy, reverby sense and not necessarily like, you can hear the black metal in them.
Right.
But it's softer.
Yeah.
In another sense. But that's been a really good band to me for a long time. They put that single out this year. It's really fucking good. It's Like It's Your Last by Devil Sold His Soul. That's my first entry.
I'm going to go for number 2, and that'll be my last one just because. But I'm going to go Erase You by Brand of Sacrifice featuring Nick Nocturnal, also featuring Termina. I don't know who Termina is, but I'm a big fan of Brand of Sacrifice and Nick Nocturnal. And I'm guessing Termina is the clean vocals in it. I don't know for sure, but there is some clean vocals in it. This is very good. I really enjoy that song.
My next one is a band I really have always been on the fence about and don't necessarily love. They're one of those bands that normies listen to them and think they're cool for a heavy band, and it kind of is off-putting to me a little bit. Because I'm like, you listen to country music. You shouldn't listen to things that I listen to. Get out of here. I'm bad to gatekeep sometimes. But it's Whiplash by Architects off their new upcoming album that hasn't been released yet. Yep. Cool. Pretty good. Next entry is a local band who I love. They're also dear friends of mine. No Culture is a shoegaze band. It is not heavy. Don't expect heavy. It is loud, and it is very, very cool. But Never Nothing by No Culture. They recorded that in California at a pretty renowned studio that name escapes me because there's a lot of renowned studios, so I apologize, guys. But my friend Joseph Scott plays bass in that band. My friend Cody Parson plays guitar in that band, and Day Scott sings for that band, and they're fucking awesome. So listen to them.
Cool.
Yep.
I know I've said this before, but you said local bands. I listened to the old Misery Chastain EP.
It holds up.
Man, I just want them to all get back together and re-record it just so it's better quality, but the music is still so fucking good.
It's good,
I love that EP. If they would just like get it. Like they could probably do it from their homes and make it sound better at this point, but just because the technology is so much better. And I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, that's something that's probably never going to happen.
No.
I would love to see Clay and Wes both do new things. I would like to see Wes return to
metal.
Actual metal.
He's playing some slammy stuff right now, I think.
I'd like to see him return to like some Tech Death or something
Yeah.
that he's actually built for.
Right.
Don't have anything bad to say about Wes. He's an awesome guitar player, good musician. But I'd like to see Clay or Wes return to the music scene to some extent. Clay's my favorite bass player that plays with a pick. My favorite frustrated guitar player.
That's pretty fun.
But also a pretty dear friend of the show. Co-worker of yours. He's a really fucking good guy. Also great music suggestions. He still sends me music suggestions on the weekly.
Yeah.
Always has good shit. So shout out to Clay Byram.
He's a cool dude.
I'll try to be less gatekeepy. It's never worked out. It's just against who I am, I guess. But
so you want to talk about the main topic of the day?
Yeah, let's get into it, man, because some of the things we've already talked about, especially when it comes to medical things, health things, and even performance things, could play a part in this topic because it's new. At least it's new to us. It's something that could
in the future
deeply impact sports of all kinds, but probably especially strength sports. And I don't know much about it. You've done the research on it. I've read what you've sent me. I have opinions already on it, but I'm going to let you take it away and explain what's happening real quick.
So the topic is basically just, it's gene editing. So everybody has heard of this at this point, I think. So I'm going to go through and describe a few things real quick for people who don't know. So the big gene editing term or what's the best word? It's like the process, I guess, is called Crispr, which is clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. Don't ask me to explain that, what each word means, because this is coming from a very base level,
understanding of this.
Very base, just kind of understand, like
we're sitting in biology 101 base level.
So it says, this is the hallmark of a bacterial defense system that forms the basis for CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing technology. Researchers can permanently modify genes in living cells and organisms, and in the future may make it possible to correct mutations at precise locations in the human genome in order to treat genetic causes of disease. So that was the initial idea behind it, was to cure diseases that are basically ingrained in our DNA, right?
Sure.
So when the target DNA is found, Cas9, which is one of the enzymes produced by the CRISPR system, binds to the DNA and cuts it, shutting the targeted gene off. An easier way to understand this means that DNA strands can be cut and replaced with new corrected molecules to create the DNA alteration desired. So basically, and I may have written this down, but think about what is it that they call it, the snowflakes when you have paper mache? Is that what it's called? You pull it apart, so that
even simpler. I think about it as being like beads on a string.
Right. That's a great example.
Yeah.
So basically, what they're doing is they're pulling the beads away. They're making a cut. They're taking one of the beads out and they're putting a different bead in it, and then they're fusing the
rope or string back together.
Yep. Yeah, that's essentially what is happening with this gene editing.
They're taking the bad one out. They're putting a better one in.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. I'm sorry, I said that. So using modified versions of Cas9, researchers can activate gene expressions instead of cutting the DNA, and these techniques allow researchers to study the gene's function. So kind of just to step away from what I wrote for a little bit and kind of just talk about that whole process. I find it really remarkable that this is even possible, that we're even having a conversation about this, right?
The possibility of bypassing cures for diseases by just replacing the disease at its
Right.
infancy.
So
So if you have like if you're genetically predisposed to cancer
mm-hmm.
and that gene is identifiable, they can take that gene out and put a different gene in.
Which it's still like mind-boggling to me how that can even be possible. And I don't know like the actual process, because like when I and maybe it's just because I don't understand DNA to
I don't
a
think
great
it's for us
extent.
to understand.
Right. We're not scientists here. But it's so incredibly fascinating to think where we're at in medical science. It just, I don't know. I sit here, even though I wrote literally all of that. Well, I mean, I took it from the internet and I wrote it in my own words or quoted it. But like, even just sitting here and looking at it, it's like, how is this even possible? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like in the future, like the world that we live in. Let me read ahead real quick before okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little more through what I had written down. So there's a quote from Stanley Key. QI, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Key, who is an associate professor in the Department of Bioengineering and the Department of Chemical and Systems Biology at Stanford University. He also led the development of the first catalyst, dead Cas9 lacking endonuclease activity, dCas9, which is the basis for the CRISPR influence, CRISPR-I. So this is kind of like where we're going to kind of veer off. But he is quoted as saying, the last category, enhancement, is likely unethical. People talk about the possibility of targeting a gene to grow more muscle or make people smarter or better looking. But if research goes into this category, only some people may be able to afford it. This could amplify the imbalance of socioeconomic status. Another facet to consider is medical necessity. Is the therapy really necessary, or are there other ways to solve the problem through currently available drugs, diet, exercise, etc.? So it's safe to say DNA editing, while possible, would be considered unethical in the current political climate. That does not mean it is impossible or will not exist. There will always be someone who wants to push the boundaries and is willing to test these modifications in humans for quote unquote for the advancement of science or to make some money.
Yeah.
So all that being said, that's basically like the notes of what I wrote. Our kind of like stance on this is going to exist at some point. There's no doubt.
It already does.
Well, I mean the enhancement part,
yeah,
which is not being researched. Somebody is going to research it.
Sure.
This is going to exist. How far into the future will it be in our lifetime? Hard to say.
One would say it would be, because most of the time when science has found it, it gains speed exponentially. We know that about technology and science. Like,
yeah, you look at I want to call it.
I mean, just look at technology since the Industrial Revolution in the 1870s, 1880s.
Yeah,
boomed.
Right.
We've gone from, everybody having a manual labor job to
probably at least half not. I don't know. I don't know the exact numbers. But.
So we've it's boomed when we've gone from just in our lifetime we've gone from calculators to
cell phones.
Yep.
Like we're talking about the difference between a incredibly basic one function computer to an entire like
the easiest example think about is look at cars.
Yeah.
We've gone from them running on steam and coal,
gasoline,
all types of different fuels, but gasoline being the primary one, to now electric and now possibly back to internal combustion engines as car companies seem to be moving away from that because of certain things. But you've seen it in that, you see it in your cell phone. I mean, everybody had, the T9, what was it called? What was that calculator called? Everybody had that when they were growing up.
Oh,
T9 was text. I don't know the reason. But
I know what you're talking about.
It was mind blowing that this calculator had all these fucking sign functions and all this other shit for math and everything like that. And now you can do that on your cell phone.
You can do that while listening to music.
Read your email on your cell phone. You can send a call from your cell phone. You can find out where your spouse is from your cell phone. You can connect to anybody in the world from your cell phone. You can FaceTime anybody in the world. Like that was like only in sci-fi movies when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I remember watching in the Alien franchise, the second movie, Aliens, they had the fucking card you could put in to the little TV, and it would call somebody, but you could visibly see them. We can do that from our fucking cell phone now.
Yeah.
No card required. Like, so, I mean, the shit that we've seen, like, even as a kid that I grew up watching sci-fi movies, we have that, like, on our person all the time now in one item.
Yeah.
This thing that functions as, like, 1,000 different things now.
So, back to the original thing. This is going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen probably
sooner rather
than
later.
later. Yeah.
There's no real. I mean, I think Dr. Mike may have mentioned like 10 to 20 years, something like that.
Probably 10 to 20 before it's prevalent.
Yeah. As far as like the research goes, I mean, people are going to do research on this. So that all this to say, kind of like the base of it is, if you get gene editing done, are you natty or not?
I mean,
it's at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Like,
well,
because it's one of those things that's very, very interesting. And how do we even begin? Number one, how do we even test for it? Can you test for genetic alterations? Like,
tests are always much further behind than the science is.
Yeah.
Much further behind. I mean, you look at like it's a terrible example in history, but you look at Hitler used amphetamines that we use medically, like now Adderall, Adipex, things like that. Even methamphetamine that people use like recreationally, use that and anabolic steroids to develop super soldiers in the Nazi party.
Yep.
I mean, that stuff happened. And that's a whole nother other facet of this conversation is, some terrible military idealist going to use it, Russians, the Chinese, something like this to create super soldiers. I don't think the need for that's there anymore because of the way other technology is going.
Right.
But I mean, you have all these like diabolical things that could fucking happen with this shit. Right? Like, but the first thing that comes to mind, and I will ask how unethical it is because I don't view it as unethical at all. I view it as it wasn't approved here and he went elsewhere to it. But the first thing that comes to mind with me is Peyton Manning's neck injury at the Colts. Peyton Manning had a career-ending neck injury at the Colts, potentially career-ending. Went and got stem cell therapy done, which at the time was illegal, at least to the degree he got it, was illegal in the United States. He went overseas to get it, came back, had his best career year at the Denver Broncos. I think he had 55 passing touchdowns in a year that he did not win the Super Bowl, but he had, some astronomical number. Came back after saying, hey, he's done. The Colts move on from draft Andrew Luck, say this is our guy from the future, who ironically retired early, probably because they never got him an offensive line. But you had an elite athlete who made plenty of money go and seek out therapy in another country where it was legal, came back, had the career of, had the season of his career upon returning. So, I mean, I don't view it as unethical, but do you view that as unethical?
So the big thing about it, and it goes back to what Dr. Key said, is the socio-economic.
Well, that's the biggest gap right here between Peyton. And if I have the same neck injury,
if you have the means to do it,
you know what I mean?
But if you have the means to go overseas and get this done, you would, right?
If I had the means, yeah. I mean, I would stay in my. I've already been riddled with injuries. Could be a lot further down the road had I not had them than what I am currently. Yeah, I would.
See that, and
especially in a medical context, for sure. Does that mean? The hard thing to identify is, does that mean extending his career? Does it mean that the therapy itself made him a better quarterback? Probably not. Anybody that ever saw that guy play knew he was terribly unathletic. He was incredibly smart and had a pretty decent arm. He knew where to go with the ball all the time. I mean, there was things that no amount of physical therapy of any kind was going to make him less smart or more smart. That's the difference in these therapies, though.
Right.
Like now you're talking about if this becomes mainstream, your ability to cognitively learn comes from a gene that could now be edited, and you could be more predisposed to learn a defense better, and now you're all of a sudden a better quarterback than you were before. So, I mean, that's definitely performance enhancing.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, stem cell research wasn't, but that definitely is, right? Like
any of these, when you go into like this sort of space, I'll just call it, and you're looking at things that, I mean, why are steroids banned? realistically, they're banned because they give you an advantage.
Sure.
Like
they give you an advantage, and also they are, from a socio-economic standpoint, they are advantaged.
Right.
Like it does go to people. I mean, middle class people can afford steroids.
Right.
But not everybody, all your gym goers can afford a cycle.
Right.
So there is some socioeconomic advantages that are required to purchase performance enhancing drugs.
Right.
Especially if you're talking about growth hormone. We know you can buy a Chinese kit for $150, but if you buy American growth hormone, you're talking about $450 plus a kit, and it's tremendously more expensive, right? So, and a kit, by the way, at therapeutic dose of 5 IUs or less a day is only about 30 days worth. Yep. So, talking about something that's tremendously expensive. So there is already that discrepancy in PEDs, whether I realize you can buy a bottle of test for $25, but at the same time, like, again, not everybody's going to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
If you buy a test on the street, and if you don't have an electronic plug like we have, it could be $100.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, if you have to have 2 or 3 bottles, now all of a sudden there is a socioeconomic gap.
Right.
Between the people that can use it and who can't. So that already exists in PEDs in my mind.
Right.
In the way of professional athletes, NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB, fighting sports, stuff like that, these people already are light years beyond us monetarily.
Right.
If it extends their careers, I don't know that I have a problem with it. And I'll tell you this, and it simply comes down to this point. If I am presented with the option, this is the reason why I'm pro PED use in everything but fighting sports. Fighting sports, there's a clear reason why
you don't want to be
physically fucking dangerous. I used to think that about the NFL, but now with the new defensive rules and stuff, that it's much harder on defense to make a play at all anymore, let alone a violent one. I'm not sure that that problem exists in football anymore. But this is a reason why I'm pro steroids in sports, because a lot of people are presented with, they're in the end of their career, they're still useful, they can still make plays, they can still do these things. They get presented with one of these injuries that could be potentially career ending. And the option is, I do this drug and I can take this next contract that may be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's the reality. It could $100 million plus is you can't say it's common because you're dealing with people that, 1 in a billion athletes. Right. So it's not terribly common. It is common in mainstream sports though. You're presented with, hey, I could get better and sign this contract, and it could mean me bending the rules, and generations of my family are going to be taken care of forever. Or I can do this and end my career now and miss out on all that money. Just from dollars and cents attitude for me, I'm taking the drugs and I'm going to do my best to beat the test. So, I realize that they are against the rules and it's unethical, but you have to put yourself in the position of the athlete. This is generational wealth we're talking about, and that's what they're gambling with.
Right.
So the ethics are blurred by the fact that their great grandkids aren't going to have to worry about money.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? Like,
so a few things that pop into my head. First thing, if we start doing this now, granted, let's say it's an injury early on in your career. Understandable to want to get back in so that you're not missing out because you are still a new star. If you're an older star, you've been around for a long time. What about the generation of new people that want to come in that don't have the money to afford all these other things to boost their athletic performance? So all of a sudden we're putting them off to the side and saying, well, my guy's still good, so I don't need you.
From a political standpoint, and this is a hard topic, but the athletes that would be most damaged by that, and because I live, keep in mind, this is an opinion that's coming from somebody that lives in an all-white neighborhood, or predominantly white neighborhood, I should say. And I know, based on my coaching experience, how much money parents are willing to spend on their kid to be better at a sport, which is astronomical. It's unfathomable amount of money that somebody upper middle class will spend on their kid to be good at sports. Not kidding. Like, they will pay anything for their kid to be a little better at baseball, a little better at football, a little better at golf, or whatever the fuck it is that they're doing. I think it disadvantages inner city kids. So you're talking about people of color, people that, for better or worse, and not in a fair way, are disadvantaged economically anyway. It puts those kids at a disadvantage at that point, because I think that at the lowest level of sport, the upper middle class are still ruling because they can afford strength and conditioning outside of the high school. They can afford medical stuff outside of the context of the high school. They can afford any type of training. They will pay for any type of training. They will pay for any type of medical help. If you don't believe me, ask anybody who has ever fucking sold SARMs. I will not sell them to somebody underage, but parents will buy them, by the dozens of bottles, to advantage their kids. You know what I mean? So if this ever did get to mainstream enough that some could afford it and some can't, it will disadvantage likely the best demographic of athletes that we have.
Right.
And if you don't believe me, look at the NFL or the NBA, where 75+% of the people playing are African American.
Right.
There's I always say always exceptions to that. There are plenty of wealthy people of color.
Right.
That will still have the same advantages and stuff like that. But there is, at the risk of sounding, too political, there is definitely a socioeconomic gap between those demographics.
Right.
And that's unfortunate because, think about something like that, the legends that it would fucking rob us of. Think about somebody like Bo Jackson, who grew up in Bessemer, Alabama, and no way his family would have afforded this type of treatment. We've never saw that. You know what I mean? Yeah. We never would have saw like generational talent with that type of thing going on. So I think the biggest problem is, and it will be the biggest problem, you'll see athletes do it first on those higher levels. Lower levels of athletes will want that done. Parents that can't afford it, regardless of race, will get it.
Go into debt
for it even. You have people that buy insurance plans for injuries on their child. This guy's supposed to be, he's in 8th grade. He's already been offered by Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, USC. We need an insurance policy that says if he breaks his leg, we're going to get paid out $4 million because he's not going to go pro anymore.
Right.
Those kind of things this already exists, but it's going to widen that gap because there's going to be some families that can pay for it and some people that can't. And everything it might take 100 years, but everything in medicine is eventually gradually more affordable until it's so commonplace that pharmaceutical companies realize they can make a lot of money off of it, and then that's where the gap happens.
Yep.
Like, they can say, hey, this treatment's $1,000. That's great. It cuts $1,000. That price tag cuts a whole lot of families out, regardless of race. There's plenty. Listen, man, we got half the fucking county here. More than half the county is white, and more than half the county is living in a trailer park here.
Yep.
Those people aren't going to afford, Coleman City's kids. Some of those are going to get that treatment done.
Yeah.
It actually is a very real economic disparity between
and that's
who's going to be able to do it and who can't.
We're talking $1,000. That's probably incredibly unrealistic for it to be $1,000.
That'd be if it's cheap, but even at $1,000.
Even at $1,000.
Even at $1,000, that'd probably be the cheapest it would ever be. You're going to have more that can't afford it than can.
Oh, yeah. And then at this point, I think one of the big things about society in general is that what ideally we want to do is get more away from the manual labor, the job working, the stuff like that. And we want to get more in tune with the arts, the athletics, the science, right? Yeah. As a society, that should be our goal. I don't
work smarter, less harder. Work smarter, not harder. As a society, should be the goal from the bottom up.
Right. And then with this coming in, it's kind of like, if this becomes a thing, when it becomes a thing, are we doing this to just make better athletes and be able to say, hey, we've got really gifted kids wherever, and we're just going to give them this gene therapy to turn them into freak athletes? And then are we doing that to expand at like athletics as a society, or are we doing it because they can pay for it? Right. That's where it boils down to. And if we get to a point where we're doing it because,
another question about it is if it's gene editing,
mm-hmm.
new genes get passed down to offspring. Do we get to the point that it's irrelevant?
That's true too. I don't know,
because people marry,
mm-hmm.
people have kids across socioeconomic classes all the time.
Right.
I mean, you meet who you meet, you fall in love with who you fall in love with. It doesn't matter what money they make, stuff like that. So do you get to the point that it's just eradicated because so many people at the top are using it? Or does it become like,
I guess
like terribly incestuous thing where we only deal with people
who are gene edited
like that? I mean, there's like this whole it's pretty slippery slope, to be honest with you. I know it's like totally like weird dystopian future kind of shit we're talking about, but like, I mean, that's also, I mean, it's maybe the most political conversation we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem with pharmaceutical companies now.
Right.
And that's the reason why so many people are, for better or worse, are left leaning.
Mm-hmm.
Because the capitalism we operate on really isn't capitalism; it's fucking crony capitalism,
mm-hmm.
and people are padding each other's pockets, and the elite become more elite, and the not elite become less elite all the time. Right? Like that's the problem. That's the reason why people start to lean that way.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about stuff like this, like the people that are going to afford it first are elite athletes, movie stars, people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that suddenly makes those jobs less attainable.
Yep.
Unless have a family that's willing to pay for those things. Yep. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty. Looking at it like this, I was prepared to look at this from a standpoint of any other PED usage, but the further we get into this, the more I'm like,
it becomes so much cloudier because it's such a weird. It's a weird type of topic to talk about because I mean, this is something that
these people would still be mortal, obviously, but like, you're pretty much talking about the fucking plot of X-Men at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
like
genetic mutations that make them gifted at something.
Yeah,
like but like controlled gifts, I guess, because there's obviously not going to be anybody.
You're not going to shoot fire from your dick hole or anything.
Right.
Like that,
you're not going to have claws, bone claws, and cover yourself in adamantium. You're not going to be, I don't think, even though
there's a class of people that might as well be.
Right.
I mean, that's the problem. I mean, I am a trailer park kid. I come from a very low socioeconomic family. Don't think I'm any better than anybody else. Grew up poor in a country town.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I grew up. My family would have, busted their ass, no telling how much overtime my mom and dad worked for braces.
Right.
Which is pretty fucking expensive.
Yeah.
But, that's like, people, that literally live and die by taking care of their children. And like one paycheck is life or death.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 hours of overtime is making it or not making it.
Right.
I can think of, I've spoke a lot of ill about my father on the show, but one thing he was really good at is providing and working hard.
Mm-hmm.
And or two things I should say, was providing and working hard. And, he provided as much as he absolutely could for us and still does in his own way now.
Mm-hmm.
But, he worked 60, 70 hours a week, still does this day. And if he has a week where he works 50, he might be in financial trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a pretty fucking fine line.
Yeah.
For blue collar people who are working their absolute ass off in a plant somewhere. That's not somebody that's going to be able to afford gene editing.
Right.
I think that it's one of these weird things, and my wife is an engineer and involved in the sciences quite a bit, like on the daily, and she works for somebody that takes defense contracts and
mm-hmm.
Stuff like that now. But I've always been of the opinion that there's some things science always wants to know more, and I feel like at some point there's some things that science just doesn't need to know.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
you talk about like, it goes into other things. You talk about the discovery of antimatter.
Mm-hmm.
Like something like a half ounce of that stuff could destroy the world.
Right.
Like, and we have it floating in a lab somewhere.
Right.
And we're just supposed to trust these people that they're not going
to blow it up.
Fuck up and drop it or something when they're studying it and not blow up. You know, like shit. Like there's some things we just don't fucking need to know.
Right.
That the world is better without it.
Yeah.
And I understand gene editing has this like very utopian sound about it because you could eliminate diseases and eliminate cancer and all this other stuff. But the truth of the matter is that's not going to be available to me and you.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean,
Until
we live in a society where we discuss and fight over the price of insulin,
right?
An actual need for people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if anybody thinks that gene editing is going to be as available as insulin even is, you're fucking smoking crack, dude. Like, and listen, I don't care how you vote. You vote left, you vote right, you're hard left, hard right, whatever political spectrum you're on. There is not a single single economy in the world. There's not a single government in the world that's going to say this is free for everybody.
Right.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to do that. There's too much money to be made off of it. Like, regardless of what your stance is on it, how you lean politically, how you vote, anything like that, that is 100% an ability and a science that is going to be left for the elite.
Yep. And that's one of those things where you get to the point, like we're talking about, is it something that, you know, because you've edited your genes, are you natty or not? At that point, if you've edited your genes to be stronger, faster, whatever, are you suddenly like, well, you can't compete tested because you've done this. You can compete untested. Well, now all the guys that are on gear are like, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah, so there
like,
are.
Does it just become irrelevant to even take gear anymore? Is gear just useless because you can just edit your genes to be stronger, faster?
There's a gene that Joey tested positive for, which is the ACTN3 gene, which makes you predisposed to be more athletic than your peers.
Right.
You're going to build muscle better. You're going to adapt to athletic things faster.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a gene that some people have.
Right.
I'd be willing. Somebody like my best friend Justin probably has that gene. Another freak athlete that's near and dear to the show. I wouldn't be surprised if Ron tested positive for that gene. Now he was given that gene.
Yeah.
By nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's fine. 100%. Don't have an argument with it. But that's something we're going to write into everybody or everybody that can afford it. And all of a sudden they're going to be more.
Then you're taking people that don't
listen,
have that.
I know what Joey's medical history is. Joey wasn't much further behind then than he is now.
Right.
Without any help.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He was just good at building muscle. Justin was the same way. Justin was incarcerated for a little while, and the only thing he had to do was eat and lift weights, and he was as strong then as he was out and on gear.
Right.
There's already people predisposed to these kind of things. So you're going to tell me everybody that can afford it is going to have this ACTN3 gene, be cancer-free, disease-free, less prone to injury because they could afford to, get 3 or 4 different genes edited.
Mm-hmm. And then you're talking about these people who are already like elite or have the money to be elite or whatever. They can afford the best foods. They can afford the best training. They can afford the best facilities.
So you put on top of having the best genes with the most amount of money and the most access to the best science around training, around diet, around all their medical.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because they already could afford this gene thing, if they're predisposed to disease, they can write that one out.
Yep.
They can, I don't know. And I don't know what the science says in terms of how far they can go.
Right.
Can they replace every fucking one of them?
Right. At what point do you no longer become human?
Well, at what point do you just become somebody? At what point is it so effective that you just become somebody else?
Right.
So that's another whole ethical, life is meant to be lived, and it's also meant to be lived by the person living it.
Mm-hmm.
You start to blur lines of what make people,
right,
and what make them different. And I think that the idea that we can write disease out of our DNA forever is a noble one to an extent. And this is I'm probably going to get some flack from what I'm about to say, but disease, heartache, tragedy, things like that are part of a life well lived.
I mean, it's part of the human experience that we know.
There's a Fallujah lyric I talk about all the time, and you've probably heard me say it. There's a Fallujah lyric that says, without struggle, there is no strength. Mm-hmm. So do you begin to eliminate the human experience by... Now, I know gene editing doesn't protect these people from murder, from car crashes, from...
even injuries.
They don't, I understand. They may be more predisposed to not have injuries,
right.
But it doesn't eliminate tragedy. Mm-hmm. But freak accidents, things like that. But as much as we would like to see life disease free and everybody be healthy and everybody have an equal playing field, one, it does take away from the human experience, and two, it's never going to be available to the masses, so it's never going to be something that evens the playing field. It's only ever going to be something that causes a wider gap.
Right.
And I don't think we see... That's something I don't feel like we see in steroids.
Yeah.
PEDs have definite life repercussions. Mm-hmm. If you've taken one outside of probably a TRT dose, the likelihood of you having shortened your life because you've taken it is very high. Mm-hmm. You're going to live less long.
Dr. Mike has an estimate for his own experience, and I think he said about 10 to 15 years on his personal. He thinks he's taken off of his life just from his gear use.
Part of a life well lived is doing it the way you want to. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means doing things other people frown upon, like PEDs.
Right.
So does it... I think most profoundly, it causes a larger socioeconomic gap, and secondly, it ruins the human experience.
Yeah.
Life's not supposed to be perfect. Life's not supposed to be disease-free. It's not supposed to be tragedy-free. All these things are fucking terrible. I think we would all like to see a world at peace that's not fighting and people aren't dying needlessly. There is a degree of dying that's needed. It's the circle of life. Yeah. I mean, it's just the way things work. Nobody wants to see a loved one go. I don't. Nobody likes to see, the same way that nobody likes to see innocent civilians blown up in a war we don't support. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to see these things. Those things, it seems to me like those things would be more beneficial to focus on than whether or not we live longer individually or are a little better than our peers individually or whatever it may be. But there's money in war and there's money in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So that's not something that's ever going to be available. I mean, at the very best, 100 years from now, you can walk into a fucking salon and get this done. A day spa, we know where they do Botox injections or chemical pills or whatever the fuck that, people, can spend their
IV lounges,
whatever, at the very best, it's like that. But me and you've discussed an IV before a meet. If they want them to come to your house, it's $250.
If you're lucky,
me and you, being realistic, it would be a stretch, but me and you can afford $250 for an at-home visit for an IV. But it's probably not going to be comfortable for us.
Right.
And we also know, for every one of us that can do it, we know 1,000 people that can't afford that.
Right.
Half of my athletes on my roster can't afford to have somebody pull up to their house with an IV and give them 2 bags of saline before a meet. Mm-hmm. So at the very best, even if it's that available, there's still going to be a gap between the people that have the disposable income to do it and the people that don't have any disposable income at all. And that's, I sound much different than I usually sound at this, but this, you're talking about something that's just patently unfair.
Yeah.
At that point.
And there is one thing that I've been thinking about this whole time that we hadn't really discussed. I don't know if you thought about it or not. There is a natural cap on our limits, right?
Sure.
Our brain causes us to not use our muscles at actual 100% because if we did, they would tear off the bone.
Yeah.
If we were to go into this gene editing and we were to create this better predisposition to, gaining muscle, being strong, or whatever. How much does our injury risk increase? Because what are we tapping into at this point?
I mean, that's genetic too. That can be written out.
Yeah.
I mean, about everything about you is genetic.
Right.
So, I mean, like, that's something that theoretically could be written out too. You could be genetically grafted to be less prone to, tendon tears, muscle tears, stuff like that. Doesn't mean it won't happen.
Right.
But I mean, theoretically, you could be, done that. And everybody that don't know, like, bones grow the same way muscles do. Every time you lift weights, it's not an actual break, but you get microfractures in your bones, and that has to heal. And that's the reason and how bone density improves when you lift weights. It's the reason why we want women to lift weights, because they're more genetically predisposed to osteoporosis and stuff like that than men are. That's the importance of women lifting weights, lies in that. That's also what's so profound about somebody like Ray Williams that squats over 1,000 pounds. His bones are physically better than yours.
Right.
That's part of it, but that's what happens when we tear down muscle. That's what happens when we tear down bone. That stuff. That's all genetic.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that could all be, if you can afford. Let's face it. If this thing is something, if you can afford one, you can afford them all.
Probably. Yeah.
I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, if you're a high level athlete, a running back for the Buffalo Bills, you're a first round draft pick, you've made it through your rookie contract, and you start having, here you are at the end of your rookie contract, you're about to get into your first big contract, and now all of a sudden you've had an injury, and you go get this therapy done, and they're like, you've already got probably tens of millions of dollars in the bank, and they're like, well, we can fix this gene. What other genes do you want fixed while you're here?
Right.
Well, my grandmother, she's it's genetic in my family. People have colon cancer. Can we fix that gene? I'm a little slow to learn the playbook. Can we fix some type of cognitive gene?
Mm-hmm.
I get really bad elbow tendonitis. Can we fix this?
Right.
I would like my kids to have blue hair and blonde eyes. Blue hair and blonde eyes. I would like my kids to have blonde hair and blue eyes. Can we fix that while we're here?
Right.
Well, I mean, you're talking about somebody that makes. I mean, that's probably even if it costs them millions. I mean, the money they're going to make by lengthening their career, lengthening their children's life, their potential children's life, stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's kind of scary, and it's a really fucking weird topic because it doesn't sound real.
Right. It really doesn't. It sounds like we're talking about sci-fi.
But those people are going to afford it first.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the other things is designer babies, like being able. And this isn't.
If you edit your own genes, if you edit your wife's genes, you could effectively have a designer child.
Yep. And that's something I didn't read too far into it, but that was one of the things Dr. Key was quoted on. I don't think I wrote it down, but he mentioned designer babies specifically as something that is a possibility. Now, I don't know the specifics of how.
I would imagine for it to have a profound effect, both parents would have to be treated before the conception of the baby.
Right.
As opposed to the baby being born and just editing the baby.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that
happens to the parents.
Yeah. Or they may have to go in and work on the embryo.
There's a lot of good things that could happen for it. You could eliminate things like Down syndrome.
Yeah. We already talked about cancer.
Cancer. I mean, shit. There's probably a million diseases we can sit here and talk about that could be eliminated, and all that's very, very noble. At the same time, this is really tongue in cheek. But have you ever seen? Magic Johnson has AIDS. Incredible athlete, now an incredible man. Partied a little too hard when he was a basketball player. Ended up with AIDS. Have you ever seen the South Park episode about Magic Johnson?
No.
And the only difference between Magic Johnson having AIDS and everybody else having AIDS was that Magic Johnson had money, and that's the reason he's lived so long and healthy post diagnosis. He's led a pretty normal life post diagnosis. But that's what we're talking about. Magic Johnson hasn't been affected by this terrible diagnosis, but if you get it,
kind of
probably fucked.
Yeah.
That's kind of the gap that we're talking about though. Gotta have a lot of rich people with really healthy kids.
Yep. That are freak athletes by design.
Smarter than all of us.
Smarter. It's really just kind of crazy to think that that's even possible.
I mean, it does it, and it goes into another thing like mental health is. Genetics have a huge play in mental health. Can we rot depression out of somebody? I mean, I can't imagine you could rot a chronic problem like my diagnosis of CPTSD. It's a learned thing. I couldn't imagine you could rot that out, but can you rot depression and anxiety out? Can you rot, BPD out? Can you rot, So, I mean, again, the only people that can afford this is going to be the elite of the elite. Like, so do they just rid themselves of all diseases and mental health disorders and becomes basically superhuman because they're smarter and stronger than all of us? Fuck, I don't know, but like, it's and then like I said, I'd raise the question too. I mean, people marry across socioeconomic status all the time. Like, does it eventually, 500 years from now, rot itself out because we're all just superior because mom and dad was?
You think we'll be here 500 years from now?
Not as long as we're having conversations like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think, and then you have personal, like you have competition that comes into play here. So you have the elite of the elites, the only people that can afford it. They're getting gene editing done. They're living longer. They're stronger. They're smarter than all of us. Their kids are living longer, stronger, smarter than all of us. It raises the question then, like, elite athletes, movie stars, your elite people, they're eventually going to be replaced with somebody. So you always have the possibility, too, of, like, we have a couple of generations that go through with this, and we have these superhumans, and they're like, okay, we don't want to be replaced. We're going to do everything we can to petition for this to be made illegal now. This was bad. This was a mistake. We shouldn't have done this. But really what it comes down to is age has finally caught up despite our good genes. And now we're going to, lobby for this to become illegal because it's bad.
Right.
Like, and then, that's another problem too, because that's at the cusp then when something's 10, 20, 30 years old. That's at the cusp that it is becoming more affordable, at least to the middle class.
Yep.
Like, and now all of a sudden, like, you're going to write your competition out because they were able to do this, and you were able to do this, and now all of a sudden it's bad, and you don't really want them to do it. Like, so that's another.
Are we going to be getting bath brew CRISPR kits?
I mean,
at some point, does the science all become
probably a long way away from that? But like, I don't know. But I mean, as part of it's like a misunderstanding, maybe a misunderstanding of our part on the science in general. Is there a limit to how many genes can be done?
I don't know. There could be, because at some point, like if you were to cut and replace and fuse new genes so many times, like where is the limit? And that may be something that they don't know. It could be that, I think my understanding, at least from the team that is currently working on it, which there are several teams, but the team that I was quoting from, Dr. Key's team, I think their thought process to make people more human, right? Their goal is not to make superhumans and do gene editing but they want to make people who have disadvantages more human, people who have these diseases more human.
Man, all this stuff starts out with noble,
right?
In a noble way. Yeah. Like, science itself is a pretty fucking noble cause. Like, you're doing it to better humanity. I'm sure World War II era scientists, there was plenty of scientists that were doing good until the U.S. government said, hey,
we need you to do this
because we're tired of losing in the Pacific. Like,
yep.
I mean, that's how that stuff comes about. And then like, all these scientists have bosses who have bosses who have bosses. They're tied to pharmaceutical reps, pharmaceutical companies. It's inevitably falls into the wrong hands. Because the wrong hands are who's paying for this stuff to be researched. Right. It's their property. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think it's really, really weird.
Yeah.
I think the only benefit of it, and this is really getting down deep into sci-fi of it, is maybe that is the one thing that combats the rise of material technology, like AI, stuff like that? Is there less reason for AI if you have elite people who are just simply smarter than all of us? Is there some type of, if it is made more readily available, does it eliminate the need for machine to replace us? Because it happens every day. I mean, it is, because this is an organic science versus material science. Like, is there good that comes from it because it lessens the need for machine? I don't know.
I think the human brain, as far as like AI versus human brain, I think it's just impossible for the human brain to physically keep up with what AI can do.
Yeah.
So I don't think that will ever
Change.
I don't think that dynamic is ever going to change. As long as we have AI, the capabilities of machine learning and machine processing is just so much faster than the human brain. I don't think
I worry about like Skynet situation.
Skynet, that's a whole.
I mean, that's like, but like it's becoming reality. There's a reason why, Google just fired somebody not too long ago because he was like, hey, this thing is beyond sentient now. It has its own plans for the world. Like what the fuck are we going to do? Like, he was a whistleblower essentially. He didn't get killed like most of them do, but it's a problem. Like, but you're getting further and further. I don't know. I think that, go back to something I said earlier, I think that there's some things that science just shouldn't know.
Yeah.
And I may be of the opinion that possibly this is one of them.
Yeah. I don't disagree, because it's literally something that we look at as like science fiction.
We never scratch the surface of it being a PED or not, because the likelihood of a powerlifter actually being able to afford this is
right. It's
you think about the best paid powerlifter is probably John Hack.
Yeah.
He wins the most anyway. Like,
maybe
that's not he's not somebody. Listen, man, he is not. I'm a Pittsburgh fan. He is not making the money that Russell Wilson is making.
Right.
Russell Wilson can probably afford this.
Yeah.
John Hack can't. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's ever going to get to the point that, like, I don't know that because of pharmaceuticals and the way they control pharmaceutical companies, the way they control money and the way they control process of drugs. I don't think it's ever going to be readily available enough for us to see in sport.
Right.
And that's walking back something I said earlier. It's not going. I don't think you'll ever see it in strength sports.
Yeah.
Even somebody like Brian Shaw, strongman is much better marketed than powerlifting is. It's on ESPN. It's like viewed by the world. They compete all around the world, represented by a very large demographic of athletes. They're not people that are going to be able to afford this. So, like, I don't think it ever comes to. You might see somebody like Patrick Mahomes go get it, but I don't think it ever is going to land at our doorstep as something we should test for or not, because I just don't think.
Right.
The Olympics, though, when you have people involved in government, I remember Dmitry Klokov is a Russian weightlifter. He was chosen because he had good genes. His father was an Olympic weightlifter.
Yep.
He was chosen by the Russian government to be an Olympic weightlifter.
Right.
That's what he was told he was going to do. He was treated very kindly and got to retire young because he represented his country and represented him well. But you have countries that are not like the United States where the Olympic sports aren't voluntary. You have places like China and Russia where you were handpicked at an early age to be this person.
Yeah.
You're going to be an Olympic skier. You're going to be an Olympic weightlifter. You're going to be this. Like, that's where cheating will take place. And because we're holier than thou, we're going to be better than everybody else, which is why we suck at Olympic weightlifting, by the way. Because we can't beat drug tests or refuse to beat drug tests. America is never going to be like, we're going to gene edit all of our Olympic athletes to win more. China and Russia and the Middle Eastern countries will.
Right.
If that technology is ever available to them. North Korea will if it's ever available to them. And my mind instantly goes to countries that are really, really good at Olympic weightlifting because that's the most relatable thing to what I do. But, like, they already cheat.
Right.
Given the option to, like, at an early age to genetically alter their athletes, like, the Olympics would never be the same.
Yeah.
America would never win gold again unless we made the decision to do the same thing. I mean, but that would be as close to us as I ever see it go.
And when you look at that one of the things is, like, it would be very interesting, like, as a spectacle. Like, we've talked about it before, having untested Olympics. Like, that would be cool. Like to see what people could actually do, like the human body can actually do when it's unrestricted. That's what we would be looking at for if we got to that point. Yeah. And I think it would be cool. I think it would be awesome to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if ethically I could get behind it existing.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, if it did exist and there's nothing I could do about it, I'd be very interested to see what happens.
I just don't think you can underestimate what a greedy
I know
superpower like China or Russia would do just to beat the United States.
Oh yeah.
Because they already do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, they already go as far as they can with PEDs. They go as far as they can with test beating things. There's always a discussion about Olympic weightlifting being banned from the Olympics because people cheat so prevalently. And, USADA and WADA, test retroactively. So if you win gold, after you win gold, if you test positive by a new way of test 10 years later, the IOC can strip your gold medal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's new testing involved, your blood gets retested based on the new testing to see if your government helped you beat your test or not. So when you talk about gene altering and likely no way to test for it, it's rampant at that point.
Yeah.
Like I said, you will never see a first country, America, France, UK, Canada, somebody like that win an Olympic gold again. Will never fucking happen.
Right.
Not unless they get on board. You know what I mean?
It just makes you, I mean, how expensive would it be to even conduct a DNA test for alterations? How do you even identify that?
The only way to test for it would be testing years prior and years after.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is your DNA the same?
Yeah.
That's being said, fundamentally, we kind of have the same thing in 19 Nors.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before. With Trend has the ability to rewrite your DNA to the point that you are just taking it once is enough to make you more genetically predisposed to build muscle than you were prior to taking it, like with a single cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So, not a single shot, but a single cycle.
Right.
So, I guess to some extent we see that now, but we're not talking about like full on gene replacement.
Right. And that's what
you're talking about some anabolics can alter genes that are already there, but they're not taking the gene out and replacing it with something else. So I don't know. I mean, it's really not a powerlifting topic, not to call you out.
No.
Like that, but it's like,
it's just
it is very interesting. And I think, if it was only going to be limited, but it's not. If it was only going to be limited to people like I mentioned before, if it's the difference between Patrick Mahomes getting a contract extension or having to retire early due to injury, there's less. I understand that. Like, if you can go make a bag for your family, fucking go make it. Like, I don't really have a problem with that so much. The problem is people outside of athletics and how is that going to go? I mean, there's people that make a lot of money outside of athletes.
Right.
Like, they're not the only millionaires and billionaires on the planet, So I don't know. I think it just causes a gap that
almost feels like irreparable. Like the gap
I think the only way it's repaired is if it eventually does get bred out because it becomes useless.
Right.
But that could take 1,000 generations.
Right.
We don't know. You know what I mean? So, I think it's part of evolution, to an extent. Like, people get better, but I do think, to your point earlier, I think that we're so deep in so many sciences like this. I think they're going to be our own undoing. I don't know that.
Right.
I don't think there's 1,000 generations left for it to handle itself. To be honest with you, it's pretty fucking scary.
Yeah.
And then you talk about another ethical issue. I mean, you got kids dying in a hospital, and like, very easily, if we have this technology, we could go in there and we could cure this kid of everything that is wrong with them. And you're going to tell them no because their family makes less than $100K a year,
can't afford it. Yeah,
doesn't have insurance. Like, and people are going to say, "Oh, free healthcare." Yeah, well, you may wait fucking 20 years in a free healthcare system. Yeah. That's the problem that people don't realize. Like, you get put on a waiting list people come to America so they can get away from free healthcare and buy into insurance so they can get treated faster.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to save your kid that way.
Yeah.
You don't have 10 years to wait. You have 6 months to wait. Like, let's, but you're going to just tell a family no because they don't make enough money.
Right.
Let the kid die. Pretty
bleak.
It happens now with other medicines,
Right.
like all the time. Like, kid needs a heart surgery. Insurance doesn't cover this heart surgery. Better luck with the next one, I guess.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hope the second kid in line doesn't have the same problem. Like, pretty fucking brutal. Like, yeah, I just don't know that. I don't think the problem is it doesn't have an end. We can talk about 1,000 different more scenarios.
Right.
And after that, we could think about 1,000 more. Like,
yeah. At the end of the day, I feel like it boils down to humans being the problem, because if we have all this technology, like we have so much food, we have so much technology, we are so advanced as a society, and we are still letting people suffer and die because
yeah, it's like
you're a lower class than me. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is what it is. Somebody had, and I'm not an Elon Musk fan, so don't think this is an endorsement of Elon Musk necessarily. Some left-leaner told Elon Musk that, made a point about Elon Musk having enough wealth that he could solve world hunger, and Elon Musk said, "I'll write the check. Tell me, what's the check for? I'll write the check right now. We'll solve it." Nobody fucking took him up on it because that's not profitable.
Right.
He could have solved it.
Yeah.
Said he would. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not he actually would, I probably fucking doubt, but he has the money to, supposedly.
Right.
But he ponied up and said, "Hey, I'll write the check.
Yep.
Let's get it done." The problem is everybody from me to the kid that's Elon Musk, from the kid that's starving to death, is going to get a fucking piece of that. And then we're not going to, by the time it actually reaches the kid it's supposed to, we're not going to have enough money to actually feed him.
Right.
That's the truth of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter if it's solvable or not. Somebody's going to get their piece until there's no pieces left.
Yep.
So that's what's happening in the Ukraine right now. That's where our money's going. It's fucking laundering, basically. Every humanitarian effort across the world, with the exception of people that are actually in it and actually providing a service, doctors, ministers, whoever it may be, that are taking care of people at the ground level, all that humanitarian aid and money and everything else that's supposed to gets put in somebody else's pockets before it actually does the good that it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with this type of technology. It's going to go to everybody else
except the people who
before
need it.
Before it goes to the people that need it most. Yeah. Even if it's eventually available to them, there's going to be some caveat when it gets down to them that says, "Well, did you do this, this, and this? Your parents forgot to file taxes in 2021. Sorry, kid, you're fucking dying."
Yeah.
I mean, like, whatever it may be, like, there's always going to be some type of caveat that keeps people from it. It's just the way of the world, unfortunately.
Yep.
And I think that's sad. The good that men do, regardless of government, regardless of economy, regardless of whatever type of rules you live under, the good that men do will always be trounced by the evil that men do.
Yeah.
100%. Too much fucking money in it.
Yeah.
You're also, I think this idea of like perfect systems and perfect governments will never exist because we're imperfect as people.
Yep. 100%.
And that's the problem with any direction ideology is like, these are perfect ideas and you're expecting imperfect people to run them, and they're never going to be that way.
Yep. Exactly it.
And that's, the problem with these medicines, this problem with these medical things. It's never going to trickle down to the people that need it most. Yep. So it's certainly never going to be a PED problem in powerlifting.
Right.
Truly.
Unless here's the one thing, like some kid, rich family, maybe he just takes a liking to powerlifting, even though there's no money in it. Maybe he's doing it just for fun, and he just trounces everybody because he's just
at that point.
altered.
Like I said, how do you test for it? How do you do everything else? I mean, that would probably happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's powerlifters that come from money. I'm sure of it. I mean,
it could just be that I just feel like I'm better than all these people.
They could be self-made. Yep. And I mean, they could be blue collar, put their money back like they're supposed to. And, took care of themselves, but just, are advantaged, whether it was hard work or generational wealth or whatever it may be, that just afford it in a place that other people don't. And I think, in saying that, I think that maybe goes back to the existence of these drugs fuck with the human experience. Like I think that those things are noble. I think that ridding the world of disease is a noble reason to look into these things. But the truth is it won't ever get to that point. And the problem is these types of medications, these types of procedures being available in the first place are so far off and so distant from the people that need it that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm sure there will be Hollywood stars or whatever, because Chad Boseman, Black Panther, is that his name? He died of cancer.
Yeah.
He would have, if that
I'm sure.
technology was available, he would have gotten it.
If it comes to saving your own life, yeah. I mean, I think most of us, if it's available to us.
Right. But my thing is, like, he's an elite, technically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
By standard, by the amount of money that he made.
Yeah. I think everybody agrees that, I think he was the best part about the MCU, to be perfectly honest. I think Chadwick Boseman is somebody we miss a whole lot, and nobody would have been mad if he would have had that option and taken it. I think there's plenty of athletes, movie stars, maybe even some, probably not many, but even a handful of politicians that were like, don't blame the guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It is what it is. But like,
I think at the end of the day, no one is going to blame anyone for looking out for themselves.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of...
Oh, they will.
Well, yeah. But it's a matter of, like, why is it fair that this person can get it just because they're an elite, because they make more money than everybody else? Whereas, why can't this little
I'm not mad that he
it?
did it, but why isn't it available to my son that's dying? Right
exactly.
now? Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
And that's, that's really, really sad. And this was not a powerlifting podcast.
It was not a powerlifting. I was trying to make it powerlifting.
But I think the problem, you can't even get to powerlifting because it's blocked by that socioeconomic gap.
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of good ideas in the world, and I think good ideas in the wrong hands, and unfortunately the wrong hands fund these things.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. We don't have the money to study this in your garage.
Right.
We don't have the ability or the know-how to study this in your garage. Right. It's already in the hands of elite because it takes the elite to figure this stuff out. And that's why those things get weaponized. Like I said, like, best case is exactly what I said. Like, the elites figure it out, don't want other people to have access to it, and make it illegal by their own accord, so that we can't get it, and then they can just go to another country and get it, or go to private MDs and get it, or whatever. There's always, people have been doing that with steroids for years. People do that. I mentioned Peyton Manning getting stem cell stuff done for his neck in another country. You can go to another country right now and get disc replacement and stuff like that. That's not approved by the FDA. Like, even more minor things. If you're willing to pay for it, you can go have those things done. Like, there's always going to be, even if it's made illegal, there's always going to be elite access to it.
Right.
It might be done privately behind closed doors, but like, once this thing's out there, it's done. Like, the existence of it already implies somebody's going to fucking do it as soon as they have the money to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
as soon as it becomes available in any way, shape, or form, somebody's going to go out there with the money and be like, I want this done. Whether it's even safe or not. Like, we don't even know if it's safe.
One would think that if something happens with this gene, it probably would have a profound effect on another gene, right? So, like, there probably have to be some type of side effects or limits to it, right? But at the same time, if there's not, because we don't fucking know. It's, I don't know. It's all very, very curious. And I think what my mind keeps going back to, and I know it's cruel, but the human experience, part of the human experience is tragedy and loss and stuff like that. And that's not something any of us want to experience, but that's really something we all should and have to experience as people. It sucks. You went through a divorce at an early age. That sucks. You know what I mean? That sucks. We've all had people that die early. diseases, car wrecks, whatever it may be, that stuff sucks. But it's also what makes us individuals, and it's what makes us people. Those things have had, dealing with tragedy in my life. That's why I am who I am today. I think I'm a better man having grown up the way I grew up and having the experiences that I've experienced. No amount of medical intervention or rewriting of history would make me the same person that I am today.
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't. I think that when you start, I think what you're doing is you're fucking with fate, and I don't think fate is something that we really should have a choice in. There's elements to it: our health individually, how we diet, how we exercise, how we conduct ourselves as people, where we put ourselves, whether it's good, bad situations, stuff like that. The things we strive for. I mean, there's ways to make yourself. You can take yourself from one socioeconomic status to another, in both directions. Had somebody near and dear to me recently who was on their way to being a millionaire, found themselves in a place of addiction, and has been wasted away to nothing. Individually, very self-made, very hardworking, came from nothing, was finally something, and now he's back to nothing. But that again is all part of. We have a choice. You're about to start talking about not necessarily if it's available to you. It's not necessarily this way, but you're kind of starting to deal with the elimination of choice.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like,
I mean, when you talk about designer babies and stuff that, it becomes this thing where it's no longer chance. It's no longer DNA mixing. It's I want a baby that looks like this, can do this. And then they just come out like that. And then that person, I mean, it assumably is, it's still a person, right? But it is a person by your design, by your choice, and it's not a person of their own.
Science figuring out things science shouldn't know. You're playing God. And there's there are limitless examples of people playing God throughout history that
did not end well.
They never do. They never do. I mean, they really don't. So I think that's pretty slippery. I think you're taking away the human element. I think I don't know that I'm not 100% sure that it's not immoral across the board.
It might be.
I mean, unethical across the board. I know you're talking about potentially saving lives, but the fact of the matter is it's not going to be used that way. Largely. I mean,
if the science is there for it to be used to save lives, it will save lives. But whose lives is it going to save?
Exactly.
That's what it comes
whose lives is it going to save?
Whose lives?
I'm sure there's going to be trials where it saves people that deserve it.
Right.
Not to say that the elite don't deserve it. I'm not one of those people. If you're more talented than everybody else, if you are smarter with money than everybody else, you deserve to have that status. I believe that. I believe that's the natural progression of things. I believe we should be able to take ourselves from one socioeconomic class to another. I believe that's inherently needed. I think we all need something to strive for. But at what point does a glass ceiling you can break through become concrete and you no longer can climb any higher because, stuff like that.
Because that we just created that gap because these people are just going.
When people talk about the death of the American dream, this is the kind of stuff that they're talking about. They're not talking about hard work not being worth it anymore. They're not talking about, being able to invest in yourself and make yourself better dying. They're talking about the literal stomping, the literal fucking limit has been set on the American dream, if that makes sense. This is the kind of thing that does that. There was a time, and there still is largely, although it's shrinking, where you could take yourself from the trailer park to a mansion and pay for everything in cash and have 10 homes and 30 cars and whatever you wanted. There's still that possibility, but it shrinks all the time with the onset of stuff like this. This is the literal death of the American dream. Left-leaners and right-leaners alike have their own ideas about what this actually means, but turning a glass ceiling into concrete is what this essentially is doing. Yeah. It makes it unfair to all of us.
Yeah.
That's really curious. And
it could be that we don't see it in our lifetime, or at least not to the extent that it's rampant and creating that concrete ceiling, like you said. But
when it's available, you will see, I believe that you'll see athletes, high-level athletes, use it first.
Yeah. Depending on what, and it does depend on what they are able to tap into, right?
Also, I'm curious, because we've said several times that, it could cure diseases or prevent diseases entirely. Does it cure the disease if the disease is already present and you get the gene altered? We don't know that. I would assume that probably not. So,
I guess it kind of depends on. Well, I really don't know.
It would seem like it would be something you'd have to live with for a while before you would see the benefit of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Definitely when it comes to muscle building, stuff like that, you're going to have to.
There will still
just because you're genetically predisposed to build muscle doesn't mean you're going to build muscle if you're not doing the right things to build muscle. Right? Does it make sense? Same way, if you have lung cancer and you go get this gene done, is it going to save you from cancer that's already present? Seems like the low-hanging fruit would be no.
Right.
It would have to be a preventative medicine, I would imagine, right? Largely. Which, honestly, in saying that, it makes it that much more elite because, if there's no reason, if it's not going to save a child with leukemia to have his genes altered, but, if you can give a, newborn baby right out the gate, if you can go have them altered to prevent them things in the future, maybe that's
right.
Or the parents are treated so the gene's not present at all in the baby. Maybe that's the way, but even still, that kind of makes it even more elite because now there's a lesser need for something like that. So I don't know. It's all there's a lot of questions about it. We don't know to what extent. We don't know if there's side effects. We don't know.
And the information could be out there, and I didn't find it. I didn't do an intensive 10-hour-long study of gene altering. I literally looked at it for about an hour.
The reason for this conversation is: would you call it performance enhancing or not?
Well, not necessarily that, but would it make you? Would you still be considered a natural athlete?
I would say not. Right.
I don't think you would be. At the point that. The discussion so far makes it to seem that even, which it's unfair, one of the big things, obviously, if you do something to yourself, obviously you're not natural. You went and you changed something about yourself. When you get into the talk of designer babies, they never had a choice in the matter. That's right. They were altered at birth. Are you going to tell them, hey, you can't compete because of the decision that your parents made? That's where things get a little more muddy, in my opinion, because maybe they did alter it, but how, is that going to be something on your birth certificate? Are you going to have to go show that to,
So that's another level. We're talking about the X-Men. Then you're talking about the whole point of the X-Men is these people that wanted to live a normal life just can't because they're being discriminated against. Well, if it's something that gets put on your birth certificate, then
suddenly you're going to be discriminated
against for. So that brings up another question, if your parents are able to afford it, are you going to be discriminated against for life?
Yeah.
There is a reverse to that discrimination in the sense that, okay, you're an upper middle class family, you could afford to have these things done, but your kid attends, Coleman High School here in town. They're going to school with people whose parents collectively made much less than your parents did. Are you now all of a sudden the target because
you're special.
Because you're special.
All the other kids in the football team don't want to deal with you because you're better than them because you're special. Yeah. You get picked on. They don't cooperate with you because you're special.
Yeah. You don't know their struggle, stuff like that. And there's a degree of fairness in a sense to that, but it's still discrimination, based on somebody that didn't have a choice in the matter. When we talk about discrimination, that's the heart of it is you're discriminating against somebody that didn't have a choice in who they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? whether it's based on race or sexual orientation or gender or whatever it may be. The root of that is this is something about them they didn't have a choice in the matter of, and this is just who they are.
Yeah.
They can't help it. Like, so yeah, in a weird sense, it opens the door for discriminations from both ends.
Yeah.
In a sense, I would, like to think that would only happen from the top down, but that's not the case.
Yeah. It definitely isn't. Like especially when there's this intermingling of
I remember specifically about my high school experience, people picking on kids that come from households that were wealthier than ours. I remember that happening in a county school. So if that happens, then
right,
it's going to happen about something like this. That doesn't mean that kid was going to end up being a success like their parents or anything like that. It just means that parents let them make a little bit more money, but they got picked on for it anyway, right? Like, so I mean, it's kind of kids are going to pick on you about anything,
right?
Anyway. I mean,
if they want to pick on
bullying happens, it's never going to be legislated out. You're never going to teach your kid enough about that to keep them from doing it or having it done to them. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. But that being said, in my household, there will be severe repercussions for bullying, but there's something that you're not going to just get rid of.
Right.
So, like, I mean, it affects every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Every.
Oh. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just a crazy thing that it is potentially going to exist in the world that we may potentially see.
It doesn't potentially exist. It exists now.
Well, I mean,
once it happens, it's a fact now. It exists.
Well, the cosmetic and the muscle building genetic alterations do not exist yet, at least as far as the procedures, the science behind it. That doesn't exist yet.
But it does exist, and theoretically in practice, it can be done based on other genes they've done it with.
Right. They would have to find the gene, isolate it, study it.
I'd imagine if you change the ugly gene to I'm pretty gene, it's not going to make you pretty, but it would make your kids have that gene, right? Like, it's probably not going to fundamentally change. Like I said, there would have to be some time to adapt to those changes, right? Like,
and I guess
maybe if you're ugly and you get that gene done, maybe your skin clears up, maybe you become a little bit more symmetrical, maybe, over time, but I don't think you're going to
I don't know that
I don't think I'm going to go to the doctor and be like, hey, man, I want a 12-inch cock. And the next morning after I have my genes edited, I'm going to wake up with a 12-inch cock, right? Like, I don't think that's going to happen. You know what I mean? There has to be some type of time element, right? Like, you have to grow. Genes are something you have to grow into, like the muscle building gene. Like, you're not going to be more muscular unless you work to be more muscular. That gene's going to help you become more muscular, but it's not going to, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's not going to be like I wake up, I was ugly yesterday and I woke up, Brad Pitt the next day. Yeah. It's not going to, I wouldn't imagine it's like that. Right?
No, so, I can't imagine that either. And then it really like, it's probably just not known well enough because I don't know, would it even be possible for genetic alterations to change bone formation? Like, the way your skull is shaped.
Well, I don't think it would change things like that. It would probably change things in your kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you had some type of disorder that made your bones grow abnormally, you wanted that gene written out, then I'm sure in your offspring that it wouldn't be present, right? But it's probably not going to, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's going to, I wouldn't think that it would save somebody from an existing condition. Now, that being said, like cognitive things, athletic things, I would imagine that would change with time. Yeah. The same sense that we talked about 19 NORs have the ability to affect your DNA to make you build muscle better later. I would assume that there would have to be something you grew into, right? Yeah. For your own effects to come. Outside of that, like pre-existing things, I wouldn't imagine it would. Maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't imagine it would just miraculously go away. Maybe it goes away with time.
I think that's
if you're predisposed to genetic, to something like congestive heart failure. I don't think you're going to wake up the next day without congestive heart failure. You know what I'm saying? Like, probably going to have to be something you grow out of, or you keep and your kids just don't have. Yeah. Like, so I'm kind of curious about that part of it, because then all of a sudden, I don't think it makes it less unethical. But then all of a sudden, it's like,
You still have to work to attain whatever it is.
And then you have to ask yourself, like, okay, if you having kids late in life, that makes your kids more prone to Down syndrome.
Right.
Sandy's pregnancy at 34 or 35 and going into her 35th birthday, even though we're still pretty young, that's still considered a geriatric pregnancy. So higher risk for Sonny's fine. There's nothing wrong with Sonny.
Right.
But you're more at risk for like Downs and stuff like that. Like as a parent, if I knew I could get those things done to save, this would also have to happen before conception also. But I knew if I had planned on having a kid and I knew I could save them from that because we waited until later in life to have a kid, maybe that's something I consider for sure. I mean, because I'd do anything for my kid. But then you're still talking about, that opens up that whole fucking conversation about, is it a designer baby at that point? Probably not. But again, if you can afford it while you're in there,
right,
maybe we can change these couple things around too, right? Like, I don't know.
And it does
there's no end to it, to the questions. There's no end possibly to we don't know what the limits of it are. We don't know if there are limits. And one thing's as scary as the other, to be honest with you. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, it's just kind of hard to fathom that it exists. Because it's literally something we grew up with as science fiction, as fantasy. It's like, this is just kind of a fun idea, and now people are physically doing the science and research and finding that, we can alter DNA.
I mean, there's so many things that were imagination just 5, 10, 20 years ago that are reality now. And it's cool as people that we're so inquisitive, we want to know more and more and more and more. But I'll just say again, there's just some things I just don't think we're meant to know. And I think this might, as noble as the cause may be, I think this may be one of those things that we're just not meant to know. And,
it could be that we go in there and somebody's like, let's start making super soldiers. It's just, I know it's kind of like outdated, but like, let's say somebody wants to do that just to see. And they do all these things and out comes the fucking blob. And it's just like, what is this? It's a mass alteration of DNA that is no longer human. It doesn't have the same functions because you changed it so much.
And imperfections are why we are who we are, and life lessons, tragedy, like I said before, are why we are who we are. And you're beginning to play God, and you're beginning to alter the human experience. The human experience largely can be defined as everybody's experience is fucking different.
Yeah.
When the closer they are to being the same, as great as an idea some people might think that might be, people know, like we're to the point now, people no longer talk about equality, they talk about equity. At the point that we are all even in terms of equity, the human experience is dead. And that type of procedure could lead to that.
Right.
I think. And I just don't think that's equitable.
Right.
I just don't think, I think you're, robbing people of individualism. I think that you're robbing people of a lot of beauty that is life and is the individual person. We're all walking around with the same genes, then, because we would all want them.
Right.
So even if it was massively made massively affordable to everybody, and everybody got these procedures done to take care of their kids, to do this, to do that, we're kind of a hive mind anyway. So few people around us get, designer kids and all their kids look like this, and are like, hey, that's a pretty baby, I want one of those.
Right.
Then we just mold into this fucking gray androgyny that everybody's the fucking same, and everybody's like, so that's what you're talking about too. On the other side of this is, even if it's massively affordable and everybody can do this, then we completely eliminate that human experience and
individualism.
Yeah. Which is what some people want.
That's kind of like, as soon as you started talking about that, I just had this this scene in my head of, you remember the Fairly Odd Parents?
Yeah.
You remember the episode where everybody was gray?
Yeah.
Everybody was the same. The only difference was the one guy. It was Timmy with the pink hat, and he stuck out from everybody else. Yeah. You think about everybody gets their designer babies and stuff, but there's the one kid who was not a designer baby. They're like,
fuck this guy.
Right. What the fuck's going on with this guy?
People think that there's different. People think that there's, and there is. It's not. I think there is. People think discrimination's bad now. Wait until 75% of the population look the same and 25 doesn't. Mm-hmm. Like 25 is gonna have a real fucking hard time.
Yeah.
But man, there's beauty in difference, man. There's reasons why people look different. There's reasons why different races exist. All of them are beautiful in their own ways and to different people. Mm-hmm. There's falling in love with somebody different than you is part of that human experience too. So like, how bad does it affect married life and parenthood? And I'm very bad to romanticize things, but like without that difference in people, like there's nothing to romanticize. Mm-hmm. Like I romanticize places. Like if New York City looks the same as Birmingham, then why do I have any incentive to
go to New York
City? Go to New York City? Yeah. Like I have that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's in my backyard. I don't fucking need it. Like, there's no reason to. I mean, individualism is everything. Mm-hmm. Like, really, about the human experience. When you start writing that thing out, I mean, people are who they are, and you love people because of who they are, not because of what they are. Mm-hmm. Like, if you are really the person you should be, like those individual things about everybody. Regardless of race, regardless of orientation, regardless of gender, regardless of any like label you can put on somebody, those individual things are why we love people. So you're messing with like the human experience, and you're messing with the human spirit, and ultimately how we perceive the whole world. That stuff goes away.
Yeah. It does kind of raise the question of how deep does it go and how much can you change and stuff like that. I guess if it gets so advanced that you can, like, I think about character creators on games. If it gets so advanced to where you can literally like adjust cheek width and bone like jaws and stuff like that,
what's scary to me is we talked about this stuff probably only being available to the elite. Look at history and look at what Hitler wanted.
Yeah. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
Wanted an Aryan race. Mm-hmm. This technology had existed in his day, he could have gotten that.
Right. Kind of scary.
But it would have been a different method than what he used, which was eradication, which is awful. But the goal would have been the same and could have been much more achievable. Mm-hmm. Because he probably could have got people to buy in because there at that time, especially, there still is now. At that time of people, you have scores of people that hated who they were because of the way they were discriminated against. Mm-hmm. African Americans, the Irish were very had dealt with a lot of racism from the rest of the UK and from Americans. Everybody in the world across every socioeconomic status dealt with some type of discrimination that they would have loved to change about themselves. So it probably would have been a pretty fucking good idea to be like, I don't want to be like this anymore. Mm-hmm. Like it would have been easy to he was really good at brainwashing people. That's the reason why he was able to turn the German people against
everyone.
Jewish people, you know what I mean? Or anybody else of color, anybody different than them. I mean, he was very persuasive. So if you have this fucking mass tool of, hey, you won't be like this, but your children will be like this, and they will never experience the same things you do. Like, you're only like, there have been other evil men other than Hitler exist in this world. There's other evil men now. There will be other evil men in the future that could have access to something like this. Like, that's an extreme example, but like, that's what that man wanted. He wanted everybody to be the same. That one race to exist. Like, that's a terribly evil thing. Mm-hmm. And the amount of culture and happiness and humanism that would have been lost in that would have been, terrible. But that's what it opens the door for.
Right.
Like, and that's insane to me.
Yeah.
The more I think about this, the more evil the existence of this becomes in my mind. I can't lie to you. I just don't see it ultimately being used as a good thing.
Yeah. And I guess it really depends on the limitations of what it can actually do. Right.
Yeah.
Because right now we're talking about taking a piece of a DNA and replacing it with something not necessarily something that's still human but better, right?
I would have to think it'd be exactly like I said, it'd be generational, right? Like,
yeah.
You're still going to be who you are, but your kids won't have to be.
Yeah.
That's fucked. It is. There's so much culture that's celebrated. There's so much like, so much of like travel is such a huge part of happiness for some people. Huge part. I have Wanderlust bad. I think about where I'm going, where I want to go all the time. And that's driven by the whole need to travel isn't just driven by geography. It's also driven by the people that live in that geography, the food I'm going to eat, the culture I'm going to experience, the differences in day to day, like all that stuff other than geography be completely fucking eliminated.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. Deep fucking thoughts this time.
A very, very different type of conversation. I mean, I knew it was gonna be, but I think we both landed on it's unethical at its core. Basically, there's good intention surrounding it, but if it exists to the degree where we are doing alterations other than for a medical need, then it probably will eventually destroy the entire society that exists right now. And create a new one. Is that a good or a bad one? Probably bad. Could it be good? It's hard to say yes because of the amount of evil people that exist. Yeah. In a perfect world, it would be good because we could just make good people better, but we're going to make evil people better.
It should be said too that good people
can change.
Good people can change, especially when they have their own problems to deal with, and money can change it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why there's a saying that says the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
It exists for a reason. I think that we need to wrap it up based on the sole fact that could be an endless conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked for 3 hours. So.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Cliff notes, ending points, kind of just, like I said, good intentions, ethically, anything other than curing diseases is going to be negatively impact the society that we know.
I just don't think science should play God.
Yeah.
I know God is a different meaning to a lot of people. But we're not really talking about, whether or not your homie at the gym, pin Trent or not at this point, But
oh yeah, also it is not Natty. Gene editing is not Natty.
That's your stance on it?
It is not Natty.
I mean, I think it's probably the furthest thing from it, to be honest with you. I mean,
at that point, you literally are changing the structure of the human.
Plenty of people that listen to this that says, hey, this is for the greater good and all that kind of shit. But I think if you're looking at it big picture, it's just fucking not.
No.
I mean, at its worst, at its best, it takes a hard turn.
Yeah. I mean,
in either direction. So.
Like curing cancer is awesome. Curing autism is awesome. These are things that we want. Is this the road to do it? I mean, is it the only road to do it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It just leads down, like you said, it's a slippery slope. Is when does it end? When do we become no longer human? Are we supposed to no longer be human? Is that like you said? Are we supposed to change to the point of we are something different than human? Is that where we need to be? I don't know. Do we open some sort of unlocked consciousness in our brain by altering our genetic code? And then we're like, we've been enlightened. I mean, and then if you do that, if that happens, are you going to share it with the rest of the world, or are you going to be like, no, I'm God now? Like, I'm over all these.
I think the
people
lesson
now.
here is be careful what you wish for.
There's a reason why Jurassic Park the movie
remains just a movie.
well, I mean, you think about the base of it, like they were, oh man, we're going to bring back the dinosaurs. You probably shouldn't bring back the dinosaurs, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, and the core of it, that's literally the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on human level and on animal level, but like still.
There are just some things you just shouldn't do. What is the quote? The scientists were so concerned of if they could, they didn't ask if they should.
I don't remember.
It's something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's some things that science just shouldn't know. We've been arriving at that for a long time. I think this is probably one of them. Give me a dad joke or two, because I'm about to have to wrap it up. I got a baby to get home to. I'm anxious to see.
I feel it. Let's see. Instagram sent me something from Powerlifting United.
Real quick on that before we get into that. Bars over a certain length have been banned in the PLU, so that means starting 8 weeks out from this ban, if it was already on the books, you can still use a Kabuki bar within 8 weeks, but Kabuki bars will be no longer in use in the PLU. So,
all Kabuki bars or just the deadlift bar?
The deadlift bar specifically. It was a deadlift. So.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not necessarily surprised either. I do think, don't need to get too far into that because we've read too much, but it does advantage sumo pullers over conventional.
Yeah. It did create sort of a unlevel playing field.
Well, I wouldn't say completely unlevel because hell, y'all still pulled big numbers on the Kabuki bar, but yeah, I mean, that's where it's at. So that's big news from powerlifting to wrap it up and make sure y'all know this is in fact a powerlifting podcast. Kabuki bars will be banned within the next 8 weeks.
I don't know if there's anybody else using Kabuki bars except for WRPF/PLU. So
yeah, I'm not sure either, but
dad jokes. My wife and I are finally fulfilling my lifelong dream of visiting the Golden Gate Bridge. And she asked me what I'm going to do when I finally get there. I said, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it.
Shit. You got one more? I don't have any today.
My doctor told me I was going deaf. The news was difficult for me to hear.
That's kind of low-hanging fruit a little bit, but it's pretty good. Let that one be it. Save them.
Batman once forgot to pay his electric bill. It was a dark night. We'll end on that one. I saw the Batman one. I was like, All
right, guys, that's the show. It was a deep one. But you can follow us on Instagram at Coleman_barbell, at Nathan Skedios, at Sip It and Rip It. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, watch us on YouTube, although you'll have to listen to us on YouTube this time. Leave likes, comments, send us DMs, rate us 5 stars, drink Scooter's coffee. Is that it?
Don't be a hoe.
Don't be a hoe. Share the show. Thanks, Andy Frisella. Don't sue me. Bye, y'all.